Tonight I watch my mate choose my twin sister over me, and I feel nothing but relief. That's what Nyra Ashvale tells herself as the bond ceremony fire casts shadows across Cale Thornridge's face. The future alpha, her fated mate, the man who's about to destroy her in front of 300 wolves. But here's the thing about rejection nobody tells you. It doesn't break you if you're already empty inside. Stick around until the end to see how a girl with no wolf becomes the queen they never saw coming. Drop a like and comment which city you're watching from. The bonfire smelled like cedar and lies. Nyra stood at the edge of the sacred circle, her bare feet cold against the earth despite the summer heat radiating from the flames. Around her, the Ashvale pack had gathered in their finest ceremonial clothes, leather and silver, fur and bone. 300 wolves pressed close, their excitement a living thing that made the air thick and hard to breathe. She was supposed to feel it too. The anticipation, the joy. Instead, she felt like she was watching herself from somewhere far away. Nervous? Her twin sister Sarah appeared at her elbow, all golden hair and perfect smile. She wore white, as tradition demanded for unmated females. It made her look ethereal, pure. Nyra had worn gray. Nobody had corrected her. Not really, Nyra said, which was true. You couldn't be nervous about something you'd already resigned yourself to. Sarah's smile tightened at the corners. Well, you should be. This is the most important night of your life. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper only Nyra could hear. Though I suppose for you, any night where people actually pay attention must feel important. Nyra didn't take the bait. She'd learned years ago that responding to Sarah's little jabs only made them sharper, more frequent. Her twin had perfected the art of cruelty disguised as concern, of insults wrapped in sisterly advice. Your dress is dirty, Sarah continued, brushing at Nyra's shoulder. Did you fall on the way here? I walked through the forest path. In your ceremony dress? Nyra. Sarah sighed, the sound heavy with manufactured disappointment. This is why people talk. You don't even try. For you, maybe, Nyra thought, but didn't say it. Sarah had been waiting for her wolf to manifest since she was 13, practicing her shift in secret, preening over the russet fur that marked her as their father's daughter. Strong bloodline, perfect genetics, the pride of the Ashvale family. Nyra had waited too. Her wolf had never come. At 13, she'd felt the first stirrings, a restlessness, a heat beneath her skin, the sensation that something was trying to wake up inside her. She'd run into the forest alone, stripped down like the older wolves had instructed, and waited for the transformation. Nothing. At 14, she'd tried again, and again, every full moon for a year. Still nothing. By 15, her parents had taken her to Elder Morvain, who'd examined her with ancient hands and older eyes, prodding at her energy, her bloodline, her very essence. There's something there, the elder had said slowly, uncertainly, but it's locked, sealed. I've never seen anything like it. Her father had gone silent at that. Her mother had cried. Sarah had smiled. The alpha approaches, someone whispered now, and the crowd shifted like a living organism, parting to create a pathway from the main lodge to the bonfire. Cale Thornridge walked like he owned the ground beneath his feet, because he did, or would soon enough. At 24, he was already leading border patrols, settling disputes, preparing to take his father's place as alpha of the largest pack in the Northern Territories. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes the color of winter storms. A scar cut through his right eyebrow, a reminder of a border skirmish 2 years ago that had killed 3 rogues and earned him the respect of every warrior in the pack. Every unmated female in the pack had fantasized about being chosen by him. Nyra had too, once, before she understood what it meant to be broken. She'd been 16 the first time she'd really noticed him, not as the alpha's son, but as Kyle. He'd found her in the forest after another failed shift attempt, sitting against a tree with tears streaming down her face. He hadn't said anything patronizing or offered false comfort. He just sat beside her for 20 minutes in silence, then stood and offered his hand. "Come on," he'd said. "My mom's making stew. You look like you could use a meal." She'd gone. They'd eaten in the Thornridge kitchen while his mother bustled around them and his father argued with pack lieutenants in the next room. Cale had told her stupid jokes until she'd laughed despite herself. She'd thought maybe he'd understood.
Maybe he'd seen past the missing wolf to the person underneath. She'd been wrong. "He's looking at you," Sarah hissed now, but Nyra could hear the uncertainty in her voice, the first crack in her twin's perpetual confidence. He was. Kael's gaze had found hers across the fire, and something passed between them. A pull, a recognition, an invisible thread that snapped taut and held. The mate bond. Nyra felt it settle into her chest like a stone dropping into still water. Heavy. Inevitable. Wrong. It wasn't supposed to feel wrong. Every story, every legend, every starry-eyed wolf who'd found their mate described it as completion. Coming home. Finding the other half of your soul. This felt like a trap closing. "No," Sarah breathed beside her. "No, that can't be." But Elder Morvain was already stepping forward, her ancient voice cutting through the murmurs that had erupted around the circle. "The bond has been felt. Let those chosen by fate step forward." Nyra's feet moved without her permission. 1 step. 2. Her gray dress whispered against her legs as she walked toward the fire, toward Kael, toward the future she'd never wanted and couldn't escape. Around her, the whispers grew louder. "It's her? The broken one? But she can't shift. Fate chose her? Probably a mistake." Kael stood perfectly still on the opposite side of the flames. His expression was unreadable, but Nyra had known him long enough to recognize the tension in his shoulders, the slight tightening around his eyes. He wasn't happy. "Nyra Ashvale," Elder Morvain announced, her voice carrying across the circle. "Daughter of Marcus, blood of the founding families, and Kael Thornridge, son of Garrett, alpha heir of the Northern Pack." She raised her arms, the firelight catching on the silver threads woven through her ceremonial robes. "The bond is recognized. Do you accept?" This was the moment. The question that was supposed to be a formality. In the 300 years of Pack history, the acceptance had been refused only twice, both times because one of the bonded pair was already mated to another, never because one was deemed unworthy. Kael looked at her, really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time. His winter storm eyes moved over her face, her gray dress, her bare feet. She saw him take a breath, saw his jaw clench, saw the decision settle over him like armor. Then he said, "No." The word hung in the air like smoke. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then chaos. "What? Did he just put—" "He can't refuse." Elder Morvain's arms dropped. "What did you say?" "I reject this bond," Kael said, louder now. His voice carried across the circle, across the pack, across every witness gathered under the summer stars. "I reject Nyra Ashvale as my mate." Someone gasped. Someone else laughed. A quick, nervous sound that died immediately when Alpha Garrett turned his head in their direction. Nyra stood frozen. The mate bond in her chest was pulling, screaming, trying to complete itself. It felt like hooks had embedded in her ribs, pulling her forward, demanding she close the distance between herself and Kael. Demanding she fight for this, claim what fate had given her. But Kael's rejection was like a blade sliding between those hooks, cutting the connection before it could take root. It hurt. She hadn't expected that, hadn't thought she could hurt worse than she already did. She'd been wrong about that too. "On what grounds?" Elder Morvain demanded. The old woman looked genuinely shocked, her wrinkled face pale in the firelight. "The bond is sacred. Fate does not make mistakes. Fate made one tonight." Kael's jaw tightened. She has no wolf. Silence again. Complete, suffocating silence. Nyra watched her entire pack absorb this information. Some had known, of course. You couldn't hide something like that in a close community, but having it announced publicly, in the middle of a sacred ceremony, made it real in a way gossip never could. She saw pity on some faces, disgust on others, relief on a few. The unmated females who'd wanted Kael for themselves. "She's defective," Kael continued, and Nyra heard the careful neutrality in his tone. He wasn't being cruel. He was being practical, stating facts. "The alpha line requires strength, purity of blood, the ability to protect the pack, to lead hunts, to defend our territory." He paused. "I can't bind myself to someone who can't shift, who can't hunt, who can't fight. Someone who will only make the bloodline weaker." Each word landed like a physical blow. Nyra's mother was crying somewhere in the crowd.
loud, dramatic sobs that made people turn to look, to whisper, to judge. Diana Ashvale had always been theatrical, always made everything about her own pain. Her father was silent. Marcus Ashvale stood with his arms crossed, his face carved from granite. He'd been silent about Nyra for years, ever since it became clear she wouldn't shift. Silent disappointment was somehow worse than vocal anger.
"The bond is felt," Elder Morvain said, her voice sharp with barely contained fury. "Fate has chosen. You cannot simply—" "Fate made a mistake," Kyle interrupted. He said it simply, like it was obvious, like Nyra was obvious, an error in the system, a glitch that needed correcting. He turned his head towards Sarah. Nyra's twin stepped forward before anyone could stop her, before the elders could object, before tradition could reassert itself. Sarah walked around the fire with her white dress catching the light, her golden hair streaming behind her like a banner. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd always known she was special, always believed the world would arrange itself in her favor. And it had. She stopped beside Kyle, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I accept," Sarah said, her voice clear and strong and triumphant. "If Kyle Thornridge will have me, I accept the bond in my sister's place." "There is no bond between you," Elder Morvain snapped. "This is not how it works. The bond is not transferable." "My wolf recognizes him," Sarah interrupted. Her eyes flashed gold, showing off, proving her point. "If my sister cannot fulfill her duty to the pack, I will. I can shift. I can hunt. I can give the alpha line strong pups." She looked at Nyra then, and her expression was complicated, triumph and guilt and something that might have been genuine pity. "I can be what she never could." The crowd erupted, arguments, accusations, outraged elders trying to cite tradition while pack members shouted over each other. Some supported Kyle's decision. The bloodline was important, and Nyra couldn't shift. Others were horrified by the breach of sacred law. Elder Morvain was trying to restore order, her voice lost in the chaos, when Kyle's father stepped into the circle. Alpha Garrett Thornridge didn't shout. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. 6.5 feet of scarred muscle and absolute authority, gray-haired and battle-tested, with eyes that had watched wolves die, and made the hard calls necessary to keep a pack alive. The crowd fell silent immediately. He looked at Nyra first, not with hatred, not even with pity, with dismissal, like she was a problem that had already been solved, a matter that no longer required his attention. Then he turned to his son. "Is this your choice?" "Yes," Kale said without hesitation. "You understand the consequences, the challenge to tradition, the questions it will raise about your judgment?" "I do." "And you still choose to reject the bond fate gave you?" Kale's hands clenched at his sides. For just a moment, Nyra thought she saw doubt flicker across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by certainty. "I choose strength," he said. "I choose what's best for the pack."
Alpha Garrett nodded slowly, like this was the answer he'd expected, the answer he'd wanted. Then he looked at Sarah, assessing her the way you'd assess livestock at a market. "You can shift?" "Yes, Alpha." Sarah didn't hesitate. She demonstrated immediately, her body rippling as russet fur spread across her skin, bones reshaping with practiced ease. A perfect controlled partial shift, human form with wolf eyes, elongated canines, claws extending from her fingernails. Elegant. Powerful. Everything Nyra wasn't. The watching pack murmured approval. This was what an alpha's mate should look like. This was proper. "Fine." Alpha Garrett's expression remained carved from stone. "The bond is severed. The rejection stands." He gestured to Elder Morvain. "Make it formal." The elder looked like she'd bitten into something rotten, but she obeyed. She was the spiritual leader, but he was the alpha. His word was law. "Nyra Ashvale," Elder Morvain said, her voice heavy with resignation. "Do you accept this rejection?" Everyone was staring, waiting. 300 pairs of eyes on her, watching to see if she'd fight, if she'd beg, if she'd break down and cry like her mother. Nyra opened her mouth. "Yes." Her voice came out steady, calm, like none of this mattered, like she hadn't just been discarded in front of everyone she'd ever known. A few people looked surprised. Most looked relieved. She was making this easy for them, not causing a scene, accepting her place. Elder Morvain pulled a ceremonial blade from her robes. "Come forward." Nyra did. Her feet moved automatically, carrying her to stand before the elder. The old woman cut Nyra's palm first, a quick, clean slice that made blood well dark and red. Then she did the same to Kael. "Give me your hands," Elder Morvain commanded. Nyra held out her bleeding palm. Kael did the same. The elder pressed their hands together over the flames, blood mixing, dripping down to hiss and steam in the fire. "Blood to ash, bond to dust," Elder Morvain intoned. "What fate made, choice unmakes. What was written, now is erased. What was bound, now is free." The last thread of the mate bond snapped. Nyra felt it go, felt the empty space where it had been filled with something colder, harder. Kael pulled his hand back immediately, wiping the blood on his ceremonial leathers like it was contaminating him. He still hadn't looked at her. Not since the rejection. Not since he'd chosen Sarah. "It's done," Elder Morvain said quietly, sadly. Kael stepped back, turned to Sarah, and took her hand instead. The crowd cheered. Not everyone. Some of the older wolves looked uncomfortable, and a few of the elders were shaking their heads in disapproval. But the younger wolves, the ones who valued strength over tradition, applauded the practical decision. Sarah smiled and leaned into Kael's side. Nyra stood alone in the center of the circle, blood still dripping from her palm, and realized nobody was looking at her anymore. She'd become invisible, irrelevant, a problem solved. She turned and walked away from the fire, from the circle, from the pack that had already forgotten her. Nobody stopped her. She made it to the tree line before her mother caught up. "Nyra! Nyra, wait!" Diana Ashvale was still beautiful at 47, even with tears streaking her face, and her ceremonial dress rumpled from pushing through the crowd. She had the same golden hair as Sarah, the same delicate features, the same air of feminine fragility that had caught Marcus Ashvale's eye 25 years ago. Nyra had inherited her father's darker coloring, his sharper features, his quiet intensity. Just not his wolf. Diana grabbed Nyra's arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "Where are you going?" "Away." "You can't just leave." "Why not?" Nyra turned to face her, and Diana flinched at whatever she saw in her daughter's eyes. "What exactly am I staying for?" "This isn't—" Diana's voice cracked. "It's not supposed to be like this. You were supposed to find your wolf, supposed to be strong, supposed to make us proud. Supposed to not be defective?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Nyra pulled her arm free, leaving blood smears on her mother's pale skin. "I've been hearing it my whole life, from you, from father, from everyone." She gestured back toward the bonfire, where the ceremony was continuing without her, where Kael and Sarah were probably already being congratulated, already being celebrated. At least Kael had the guts to say it out loud. "Don't do this." Diana's tears fell faster now, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "Don't make this harder than it already is." "Harder for who? You?" Nyra laughed, sharp and bitter. The sound startled a bird from a nearby tree. "I just got rejected in front of the entire pack. My twin sister took my mate. My future is destroyed, and you're worried about me making things harder? That's not what I—" Diana stopped, swallowed, started again with visible effort. "Your father wants to speak with you." "I'm sure he does." "Nyra, please, he's trying to help. He has ideas about how to manage this, how to minimize the damage." "To who? Me or the family reputation?" Diana didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Tell him I'm not interested," Nyra said. She turned to leave again, but her mother's next words stopped her cold. "If you walk away now, you can't come back." Nyra looked over her shoulder. "Is that a threat?" "It's the truth." Diana's face was pale, exhausted, her beauty dimmed by genuine fear. "The pack won't accept you after this. You'll be seen as a reject, an outcast, a cautionary tale. If you leave before your father can salvage the situation, there won't be anything left to salvage. You'll have nothing." "What situation?" Nyra asked quietly. "I have no mate, no wolf, no value to the pack. What exactly is there to salvage?" "Your father might be able to arrange something, another pack maybe, somewhere smaller, less prestigious. Or a position here. You could work in the archives, help Elder Morvain with the histories. You want me to stay and be what? The broken daughter who shelves books and avoids eye contact at pack gatherings? It's better than being alone." Is it? Nyra felt something shift inside her, the same something that had stirred during the rejection, hot and furious. Is it really better to stay somewhere I'm pitied and dismissed? To watch my sister live the life that was supposed to be mine? To see Kyle every day and remember that he chose her because I wasn't good enough? Her mother's face crumpled. Please don't go. You're my daughter. I love you.
No, Nyra said, still walking. You love the idea of what I should have been. There's a difference. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. She heard her mother sob, heard someone call her name from the direction of the bonfire. Her father, probably, finally deciding to involve himself. But Nyra kept moving. Through the forest, past the boundary markers that separated Ashvale territory from the wild lands beyond, away from the packland she'd lived on her entire life.
She walked until her feet bled and her legs shook. She walked until the sounds of the ceremony faded to nothing, replaced by the natural sounds of the forest at night, wind in the leaves, distant water, the soft movements of nocturnal creatures. She walked until she was completely, utterly alone. Then, finally, she stopped. The forest at night was different outside pack territory, wilder, dangerous, full of things that didn't respect pack law or fear wolf retribution. Nyra sat with her back against an ancient oak tree, her gray dress torn and dirty from the walk, her bare feet raw and bleeding. She should have been terrified. A human girl alone in the wilderness, miles from civilization, with predators, both animal and supernatural, hunting in the dark. She wasn't. She was just tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of hoping. Tired of waiting for a wolf that would never come, for acceptance that would never be given, for a place in a world that had made it clear she didn't belong. Tired of being broken. The night air was cool against her skin. Above, the moon was 3 days from full, bright enough to cast shadows through the canopy. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, not her pack, but some other group marking their territory, claiming their space in the darkness. Nyra closed her eyes and let the sounds wash over her. Except you're not broken, something whispered in the back of her mind. The same something that had stirred during the rejection, hot and furious and ancient. She'd felt it before. Little moments throughout her life when something that wasn't quite a wolf had pressed against the inside of her skin, trying to wake up, trying to emerge. She'd thought it was phantom pain, wishful thinking, her mind inventing sensations because the absence of her wolf was too painful to accept. But now, sitting alone in the dark with nothing left to lose, she wondered. What are you? She asked the darkness, the forest, herself. The darkness didn't answer, but when she breathed in, she tasted smoke and copper. When she exhaled, the air around her warmed, just slightly, just enough to notice. Nyra opened her eyes and looked at her hands. They looked normal, human, unremarkable. Pale skin, slim fingers, the cut on her palm from the rejection ceremony still bleeding sluggishly. But for just a second, so brief she might have imagined it, she could have sworn she saw her veins glowing beneath her skin. Not gold, like a wolf's eyes when they were close to shifting. Red, like embers, like fire waiting to catch. Well, what do we have here? Nyra's head snapped up. 3 wolves stood at the edge of the small clearing, not shifted, fully human, but predatory in the way they moved, the way they spread out to block any escape routes, the way their eyes caught the moonlight and reflected it back wrong. Rogues. Nyra recognized the signs. Mismatched clothes, wild hair, the lean, hungry look of wolves who hunted without pack structure or territory. They were the outcasts, the exiled, the ones who'd broken pack law or been driven out for crimes ranging from theft to murder. They didn't play by the rules that governed pack wolves. The one in the middle grinned. He was young, maybe 20, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow and teeth too white in the darkness. Little far from home, aren't you, sweetheart? Nyra slowly got to her feet. Her legs protested, muscles screaming from the long walk, but she forced them steady. Showing weakness to rogues was suicide. I don't want trouble, she said, keeping her voice calm, neutral. The rogue laughed. Yeah? Well, you found it anyway. He tilted his head, inhaling deeply the way wolves did when they were scenting prey. You smell like a pack. Northern Territories. Ashvale, if I'm not mistaken. His grin widened. But there's no wolf on you, just a lost little human wandering where she doesn't belong. The other two rogues moved closer, circling like the predators they were. One was older, maybe 40, with greasy hair and a knife strapped to his thigh. The other was barely 18, all nervous energy and darting eyes. Probably new to the rogue life, still proving himself. "We could take you back," Scarface said, conversational. Casual, like they were discussing the weather. "Ransom you to your pack. I bet they'd pay good money for Marcus Ashvale's daughter." He paused, studying her face. "Or maybe they wouldn't. You do smell kind of defective, wrong, like something's off about you." Heat flared in Nyra's chest, sharp, sudden, angry. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't what?" Scarface stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the rot on his breath, see the yellow in his eyes, count the gaps in his teeth. "Don't hurt you? Don't take what we want?" He reached out, grabbing her wrist hard enough to grind the bones together. "Sorry, sweetheart, but that's not how this works." Nyra felt it snap. Not the mate bond. That was already gone, already ash. This was something else. Something deeper. Something that had been locked away, buried, sealed behind walls she didn't know existed. And now those walls were cracking. Heat flooded her veins, real heat, burning hot enough to hurt, hot enough to sear. Her vision blurred red at the edges. The air around her shimmered like summer heat rising from pavement. Scarface yanked his hand back with a yelp. "What the?" His palm was burned. Actually burned. Blistered and smoking, the skin red and bubbling like he'd grabbed a hot poker. Nyra looked at her own wrist where he'd grabbed her. Her skin was glowing, actually glowing, veins lit from within like molten metal running just beneath the surface. The gray fabric of her dress smoked where it touched her arm. "What are you?" Scarface stumbled backward, fear replacing his predatory grin, his burned hand cradled against his chest. Nyra didn't know. But when she opened her mouth to answer, smoke came out instead of words. And when she exhaled, fire. Not a lot. Not a torrent or a blast or anything controlled. Just a flicker, a spark, a brief tongue of flame that licked the air between them and died. But it was enough. The older rogue swore viciously and shifted, bones cracking, fur sprouting, until a massive gray wolf stood where the man had been. But he didn't attack. He just backed away, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from his chest. The young one ran without bothering to shift, crashing through the underbrush like prey fleeing a hunter. Scarface stared at Nyra for one more heartbeat, his eyes wide with genuine terror. Then he ran too. Within seconds, she was alone again. Nyra stood in the clearing, staring at her hands as the glow faded, as the heat receded like a tide going out, as whatever had been inside her retreated back into the depths. Her skin looked normal now, pale, unmarked. The only evidence anything had happened was the singed fabric of her dress and the faint smell of smoke hanging in the air. She should have been terrified. She should have been questioning her sanity, wondering if the stress of the rejection had broken something in her mind, if she was hallucinating or having some kind of psychotic break. Instead, she started laughing. Quietly at first, then louder, until the sound echoed off the trees and scattered the small creatures hiding in the darkness. Because for the first time in her entire life, Nyra Ashvale didn't feel weak. She didn't feel broken. She didn't feel like a mistake that fate had made. She felt dangerous, and she wanted more. The laughter died in her throat when she realized she had no idea what to do next. Nyra stood in the clearing, the smell of smoke still clinging to her clothes, and felt the adrenaline drain away like water through her fingers. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from whatever had just happened. The fire, the heat, the power that had surged through her veins like nothing she'd ever experienced. She needed answers. The problem was, she had no idea where to find them. Going back to the pack wasn't an option. Even if they'd take her, which they wouldn't, she couldn't exactly walk up to Elder Morvain and ask why she could breathe fire instead of shift into a wolf. They'd either think she was insane or dangerous, possibly both. And dangerous things got put down in pack territory. Nyra looked at her hands again in the moonlight. Normal. Completely normal. Pale skin, slim fingers, the cut on her palm from the rejection ceremony already scabbing over.
How are you? She whispered to herself, to the darkness, to whatever was living inside her chest where her wolf should have been.
This time she felt something respond. Deep in her chest, where the mate bond had been and wasn't anymore, something stirred, not painful, not comforting either, just present, waiting, like a dog that had been locked in a room for years and could finally hear someone at the door. She needed to figure this out, alone. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction, dark and wild and full of things that would happily kill a lone human girl. But Nyra had grown up hearing stories about the old places, the forbidden zones that even pack wolves avoided, places where the rules were different, where ancient things still lingered, where magic hadn't been domesticated into shifting and mate bonds and pack hierarchy, places where someone like her might find answers. She started walking, leaving the clearing and the memory of the rogues behind. By dawn, Nyra's feet were bleeding through the makeshift wrappings she'd torn from her dress hem. Every step sent sharp pain shooting up her legs, but she kept moving. Stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering Kael's face when he'd rejected her, Sarah's triumphant smile, her mother's tears that were more about embarrassment than actual concern. Better to focus on the pain. At least that was honest. The forest had changed as she'd walked through the night. The trees were older here, their trunks thick enough that 3 men couldn't link hands around them. Moss hung in thick curtains from the branches, and the air tasted different, heavier, older, like breathing in compressed time. The undergrowth was different too, plants she didn't recognize with leaves that seemed to follow her movement. This was the deep wood. Pack wolves hunted in the outer forests, but nobody came here. Too many disappearances. Too many stories about wolves who'd ventured into the deep wood and never returned, or returned wrong. Eyes that had seen things they shouldn't, minds that couldn't quite settle back into pack life, bodies that moved just slightly off, like they'd forgotten how to be entirely human. Nyra had always thought those were just stories to keep young wolves from wandering too far from packlands. Now she wasn't so sure. The trees here felt aware. She could feel them watching her, could almost hear them whispering to each other in a language that existed below the threshold of actual sound. Every shadow seemed deeper than it should be. Every rustle in the undergrowth could be anything. A stream cut through the trees ahead, the water running clear over smooth stones worn glass smooth by centuries of flow. Nyra stumbled toward it and collapsed on the bank, cupping water to her mouth with hands that trembled. The cold helped, shocking some clarity back into her exhausted mind. She needed food, shelter, a plan beyond just walking until she died of exposure or something ate her. "You're far from home, little wolf." Nyra spun around, water dripping from her chin, her heart slamming against her ribs. A woman stood at the edge of the trees. Old, truly old, not pack elder old, but ancient in a way that made Nyra's skin prickle with instinctive unease. Her hair was white as birch bark and hung past her waist in a sheet so straight it looked like it had been ironed. She wore layers of fabric that might have been gray or might have been every color faded to nothing over countless years. Her face was lined but not weathered, preserved like something pickled. Her eyes were the problem. They were completely black. No whites, no iris, no pupil. Just solid black, like looking into a well with no bottom, like staring into the space between stars. "I'm not a wolf," Nyra said automatically, her voice coming out hoarse. "No." The woman tilted her head, studying her with those impossible eyes, and the movement was too smooth, too fluid, like a snake testing the air. "You're not, but you smell like them, like pack and blood and broken bonds." She smiled, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too white, filed to points. "And like fire. You smell like fire trying not to burn." Nyra's heart hammered against her ribs. "Who are you?" "Names have power, child, especially here, especially in the old places where the world's bones are close to the surface." The woman moved closer, her footsteps completely silent on the forest floor. Not quiet, but actually soundless, like she wasn't entirely present in the physical world. "But you can call me Mara. I've been called worse." "What do you want?" "Wrong question." Mara crouched by the stream with an ease that suggested her ancient body had none of the limitations it should. She dipped her fingers in the water. Where she touched, the surface rippled in patterns that shouldn't exist, geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly,
fractals that seemed to extend into dimensions Nyra's eyes couldn't quite process. The question is, what do you want? A girl alone in the deep wood, bleeding and broken and burning from the inside out.
You're either running from something or running toward it.
Both, Nyra said before she could stop herself. Mara laughed. The sound was like wind through dead leaves, like branches cracking under ice. Honest, I like that. Honesty is rare in wolves. They're all pack politics and dominance games, forever performing for each other, forever calculating who's above them and who's below. She stood, water dripping from her fingers in defiance of gravity, flowing upward instead of down before evaporating into mist. You, though, you're not performing. You're just lost. Can you help me?
Maybe, maybe not.
Depends what you need help with. Mara's black eyes fixed on her, and Nyra felt like she was being read, every thought and fear laid bare. But nothing comes free, especially in the deep wood. Everything has a price. Nyra took a breath. This was insane. Talking to some ancient creature in the forbidden forest, asking for help with a power she didn't understand. But she was out of options, out of time, out of places to run. Something's inside me, she said, and once she started talking, the words poured out like blood from a wound. Something that's not a wolf. I can feel it. Tonight it came out and I burned someone. Made fire, real fire, not metaphor, not imagination. I don't know what I am or what's happening to me, and everyone I've ever known thinks I'm broken because I can't shift. The words came faster now, months and years of frustration and confusion spilling out. I need to know what I am. I need to understand this before it kills me, or I hurt someone, or I lose control completely, and before you go back and burn down the pack that rejected you? Nyra stopped. What? Oh, don't look so shocked. Mara waved a hand dismissively, and the air shimmered where her fingers passed through it. You're radiating rage under all that exhaustion. I can taste it on the air, thick as honey. Your mate rejected you in front of everyone, chose your twin sister, made you a laughingstock. Of course you want revenge. It would be abnormal if you didn't. I don't... Liar. Mara's black eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made Nyra want to look away but found she couldn't. You want to watch them burn. Want to see the ones who dismissed you kneel and beg forgiveness. Want your sister to know what it feels like to be second choice, to be the one left standing alone while everyone celebrates someone else. She smiled, sharp and knowing. That's not weakness, child. That's being human, even those of us who aren't. Nyra's hands clenched into fists. Can you help me or not? I can show you what you are. What's been locked inside you since the day you were born, sealed away by people who were too afraid to let it wake. Mara moved closer until Nyra could smell her. Wood smoke and copper and something else, something old and wild that had no name in any modern language. But knowledge has a price. Everything does, especially here where the old rules still apply. What price? 3 days of your time. You stay with me, let me examine you properly, figure out what exactly is sealed inside that fragile human body of yours. In exchange, I teach you the basics, how to call the fire without it consuming you, how to control what you're becoming, how to survive long enough to become dangerous. Mara extended a hand. Her fingers were too long, the joints bending in too many places, in ways that human fingers shouldn't bend. Or you can keep stumbling through the forest alone, hoping the power doesn't tear you apart from the inside before something else kills you. Your choice. Nyra looked at the offered hand. Every instinct screamed that this was a mistake, that making deals with strange creatures in forbidden forests was how people ended up dead or worse than dead, was how cautionary tales began. But what choice did she have? She took Mara's hand. The world tilted sideways. Mara's home wasn't a home in any normal sense of the word. It was a cave carved into the side of a cliff that Nyra was absolutely certain hadn't been there a moment ago, filled with things that shouldn't exist, bones that were too large to be from any animal she recognized, with joints that suggested limbs and configurations that violated basic anatomy, crystals that pulsed with their own light, rhythmic and organic like heartbeats. Books bound in leather she really hoped wasn't human, written in languages that made her eyes water when she tried to read them, the letters seeming to crawl across the pages. Shelves lined the walls, crammed with jars containing things floating in liquid, some she recognized as herbs, others that looked disturbingly like organs,
still others that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. "Sit," Mara commanded, pointing to a circle carved into the stone floor. It was elaborate, filled with symbols that hurt to look at, inlaid with what looked like silver but probably wasn't. Nyra sat. The stone was warm beneath her, almost hot, like sitting on a rock that had been in the sun all day, even though they were deep inside a cave. Mara began pulling items from various shelves, bundles of herbs that smelled wrong, stones that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, a knife that looked like it was made from obsidian but had an edge that shimmered like heat waves. "Take off your dress." "What?" "I need to see your skin. The markings. The seal." Mara didn't look at her, busy arranging items around the circle with precise care. "Unless you want me to work blind. Because I can try, but the results will be messier and there's a much higher chance of accidentally killing you." "What markings?" Mara gave her a look that suggested she thought Nyra was being deliberately stupid. "The seal markings. The ones that were burned into you at birth to lock away what you are. They'll be somewhere on your torso, probably your back, since that's traditional for this kind of work." She paused, really looking at Nyra now. "You really don't know any of this, do you? Your pack told you nothing?" Nyra shook her head mutely. "Your pack truly failed you in every possible way." Mara sounded almost disgusted, which was strange coming from a creature who probably wasn't entirely human herself. "Fine. I'll explain while I work. Now strip, or this won't work, and you'll have wasted both our time." Nyra hesitated, then pulled the ruined gray dress over her head. She was left in her undergarments, sitting in a circle in a cave with a creature who might not even be human, about to let that creature do something to her that involved a very sharp knife. This was definitely the worst night of her life. Or the strangest. Possibly both. Mara walked around her slowly, those black eyes examining every inch of exposed skin with clinical detachment. "There," she said finally, touching a spot between Nyra's shoulder blades with one too long finger. The touch was cold, colder than it should be. "See? I can't see my own back." Mara huffed with impatience, then produced a mirror from somewhere. Nyra hadn't seen her pick it up, and positioned it so Nyra could see her reflection, or rather, her back. There were marks on her skin, faint, almost invisible unless you knew to look for them, but definitely there. Lines and curves that formed a pattern like overlapping circles, spiraling inward toward her spine in a design that was simultaneously beautiful and deeply wrong. The lines seemed to pulse slightly, like they had their own heartbeat. "What is that?" Nyra breathed. "A seal. A very old, very powerful seal designed to lock away something that absolutely terrified whoever put it there." Mara traced the pattern with one too long finger, not quite touching, following the spirals with evident appreciation. This kind of work requires incredible skill, years of study, deep knowledge of binding magic and bloodline manipulation, and incredible fear. Someone was very, very afraid of what you might become. "My parents did this? Or someone in your bloodline generations back? Could be your great-great-grandmother. Could be further back than that. These seals can be set to trigger at birth, passed down through the blood, like genetic memory." Mara pulled back, considering the marks with the air of an artist appreciating another's work. But whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. This isn't some crude binding slapped together in desperation. This is art. This is precision. This is someone who understood exactly what they were locking away and took no chances. "Can you remove it?" "I can crack it. Weaken it enough that you can learn to use what's underneath without it consuming you entirely, without it burning you from the inside out the moment it's released." Mara's smile was sharp as broken glass. Removing it entirely would likely kill you. Whatever's locked inside has been pressed down, compressed, concentrated for your whole life. 20 years of power squeezed into a space smaller than your fist. Releasing it all at once would be like removing a dam and expecting to survive the flood. You'd drown. Or burn. Probably both. "So I'm stuck with it?" "You're stuck managing it. There's a difference." Mara began arranging her materials around the circle with careful precision. Herbs at the cardinal points, stones between them. The obsidian knife laid across her lap. The seal will always be there, but weakened. Think of it like a door that was welded shut. I'm going to cut through the welds enough that you can open it when you choose. Let out what you need, then close it again before it overwhelms you. Control instead of prison. And if I can't control it?
Then you burn, and I'll have wasted 3 days. Mara shrugged. Now be quiet. This requires concentration, and if I slip, we both might die. Or worse. What's worse than dying? You'd be surprised how many things are worse than a clean death. Mara began to chant. The language was nothing Nyra had ever heard, nothing that sounded like it should come from a human throat. The words slithered through the air like living things, wrapped around Nyra's skin, sank in through her pores. The circle beneath her began to glow, not with normal light, but with something red and angry that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Pain. Sharp, sudden, excruciating pain radiating from the marks on her back like someone had pressed a hot iron against her spine. Nyra screamed. "Don't move!" Mara's voice cut through the agony like a whip crack. "If you break the circle, the backlash will kill us both. Stay. Still!" Nyra clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms hard enough to draw blood. The pain intensified, spreading from her back through her entire body like wildfire. It felt like her veins were filling with molten metal, like her bones were turning to hot ash, like every cell in her body was burning and dying and being reborn in the same endless instant. She could feel it, the seal cracking, not breaking, but fracturing, like ice on a pond under too much pressure. Tiny cracks spreading through the pattern on her back, each one releasing a little more of what had been locked away. And beneath those cracks, something massive stirred, something that had been sleeping for a very, very long time. Heat flooded her body. Real heat, burning from the inside out, temperature rising until sweat evaporated off her skin before it could form drops. Her skin began to glow again, brighter than it had with the rogues, bright enough to cast shadows that danced around the cave walls. "Yes," Mara hissed, her black eyes gleaming with something that looked like hunger or excitement or both. "Yes, there you are. Show me what you really are. Show me what they were so afraid of." The seal gave way with a sensation like something ripping inside Nyra's chest, like a scab torn off a wound that had never properly healed. Fire erupted from her skin. Not metaphorical fire, not the glow of heat or the suggestion of flame. Actual fire, wreathing her arms, her shoulders, crawling up her neck into her hair. Flames that burned bright and hot and real, that crackled and consumed oxygen and gave off actual heat that made the air shimmer. She should have been burning. Should have been dying in agony, skin charring, flesh melting. Instead, she felt powerful. The flames died as quickly as they'd come, snuffed out like candles, leaving Nyra gasping in the circle. Her skin was smoking but unmarked. Her hair was intact. Even her undergarments were undamaged, though they should have burned to ash. Mara was laughing. "Oh, this is delicious," the old creature said, her black eyes gleaming with delight. "Do you know what you are, child? Do you have any idea what's been locked inside you all these years?" "No," Nyra managed, her voice raw. "You're a phoenix carrier. A bloodline so old most wolves think it's extinct, think it's just legend and fireside stories." Mara circled her again, drinking in the sight like wine. "Your ancestors weren't wolves at all. They were the fireborn, the ones who ruled these lands before the wolf packs claimed dominance, before shifting became the only acceptable form of power. They commanded fire and ash and rebirth. They were feared. They were worshipped. They were hunted to near extinction by wolves who couldn't tolerate a power they couldn't control." Nyra's mind reeled, trying to process this. "But my family are wolves. My father, my mother, Sarah." "Your family has been breeding with wolves for generations, trying to dilute the phoenix blood, trying to make it disappear into the genetic noise." Mara's voice was matter of fact. "Someone in your family line carried the phoenix gene, and it's been sleeping in your blood ever since, recessive, hidden, waiting for the right combination, the right trigger, and now it's waking up in you." "I don't understand. If it's been in my family this whole time, why seal it? Why not just—" "Because a phoenix carrier is stronger than any alpha, more dangerous than any pack combined. Because your power doesn't submit to pack hierarchy, doesn't bend to dominance displays, can't be controlled by mate bonds or territorial instincts." Mara leaned in close. "You're a threat to everything the wolf packs built their entire society on. So they sealed it away generation after generation, hoping it would just disappear. That you'd just be a failed wolf instead of what you actually are." "What am I actually?" Mara's smile was vicious. a weapon they accidentally aimed at themselves. So, the next 3 days blurred together in a haze of pain and fire, and learning that made Nyra's rejection seem like a minor embarrassment in comparison. Mara was a brutal teacher. She didn't coddle or encourage or offer gentle corrections or praise effort. She pointed out what Nyra was doing wrong, usually while Nyra was on fire or bleeding or both, and expected her to figure out the solution through trial and error. Mostly error. Again, Mara said for what felt like the 1,000th time. Nyra was exhausted. They'd been at this for hours, trying to summon fire without losing control, without letting it consume her, without accidentally setting the entire cave system ablaze. The stone around them was scorched black in places where she'd failed. She'd failed a lot. "I can't," Nyra said. Her hands were shaking, her whole body trembling from exertion and exhaustion. "I've been doing this for 6 hours straight. I need to rest. The rogues who attack you won't wait for you to rest. The pack wolves hunting you won't care if you're tired." Again. Nyra glared at her but raised her hands. She tried to find that place inside herself where the heat lived, that spot deep in her chest where the seal had cracked, and the phoenix fire waited like a caged animal. Nothing. Just exhaustion and frustration and the growing certainty that she'd never actually control this. "You're thinking too much," Mara said, watching her with those unsettling black eyes. "Fire doesn't think. It doesn't calculate or plan or worry. It is. It exists. It burns. Stop trying to control it like you're solving a math problem and just let it happen." "That's contradictory advice. You just told me I need to control it." "Control and force aren't the same thing. You're trying to grab the fire and strangle it into submission. That's not how this works." Mara picked up a burning brand from the small fire she kept in the corner. "Watch. Fire doesn't fight its own nature. It burns because burning is what it does. You need to stop fighting what you are and just be it. Now. Again." Nyra took a breath, closed her eyes, stopped trying to grab the fire with mental hands, and just felt for it. The warmth in her chest. The ember that had been there since the seal cracked, constant and patient. She thought about Kyle's face when he'd rejected her, Sarah's triumph, her father's silence. She thought about being called defective for 20 years. She exhaled. Flames flickered to life in her palms, small, controlled, steady, dancing in her hands like they belonged there. "Better," Mara said, and it was the first actual praise Nyra had received in 3 days. The word felt like victory. "Now make it bigger." Nyra focused on the feeling, the connection to the fire. The flames grew, spreading up her forearms, wreathing her hands in tongues of fire that didn't burn her skin. "Good. Now throw it." "What?" "Throw it. At that target." Mara pointed to a stone she'd set up across the cave, marked with a circle of chalk. "The fire is yours. You can shape it, direct it, use it as a weapon or a tool, but you have to believe you can. Belief is half of magic. Now throw." Nyra looked at the stone, about 20 feet away. She tried to imagine the fire leaving her hands, arcing through the air like a thrown ball, hitting the target dead center. She threw. The fire flew wild, missing the stone entirely and scorching the cave wall instead, leaving a black smear on the rock. Pathetic. Again. They went until Nyra's arms felt like lead and her head pounded with exhaustion, until she could consistently hit the target, until she could summon fire without conscious thought, until it became as natural as breathing or blinking. "Enough," Mara finally said when Nyra swayed on her feet. "You're getting sloppy, and sloppy gets you killed." Nyra collapsed on this cave floor, panting like she'd run a marathon. Every muscle ached. Her clothes, new ones Mara had provided from somewhere, simple leather pants and a tunic that wouldn't catch fire easily, were singed at the edges despite her best efforts. But she could control it now. The fire. The power that had terrified her when it first appeared. Well, control was maybe too strong a word. She could summon it deliberately instead of just when she was terrified. That was progress. "Why are you helping me?" Nyra asked between gasps for air. "What do you actually get out of this? 3 days of your time teaching someone you just met?" Mara was silent for a long moment, staring into the small fire in the corner like it held answers. "I'm old," she said finally. "Older than the wolf packs, older than most of these forests, older than the treaties and territories and hierarchies that govern the supernatural world now.
I've seen civilizations rise and fall, seen magic bleed out of the world as mundane things took over, seen wonder replaced by rules and regulations. She looked at Nyra with those bottomless black eyes. You're interesting. A phoenix carrier awakening in a wolf-dominated world. In a family that spent generations trying to extinguish exactly what you are. I want to see what happens. I want to see if you burn them all down or if they crush you first. That's it? You just want to watch?
Don't underestimate the value of a good show, child. When you've lived as long as I have, entertainment becomes precious. Mara's smile turned sharp. Besides, I have no love for the wolf packs. They drove my kind to the edges long ago, claimed all the good territory for themselves, turned magic into something shameful and hidden, something to be controlled and regulated instead of celebrated. If you end up burning down their precious hierarchy, I'll enjoy that immensely.
I'm not planning to burn anything down.
Yet.
You're not planning it yet. Mara pulled out food from somewhere, bread and dried meat and cheese that tasted better than it had any right to given its source. But you will. You know you will. They rejected you, humiliated you, cast you aside like garbage. And now you have power. Real power. The kind that doesn't care about pack politics or bloodline purity. You really think you won't use it? Nyra didn't answer. Because Mara was right. She'd been thinking about it. In the quiet moments between training sessions when the exhaustion let her mind wander. She thought about walking back into Ashvale territory wreathed in flames. About Kyle's face when he saw what she'd become. About Sarah's shock when her broken, defective sister turned out to be anything but. She thought about making them all understand what they'd thrown away. What they'd created by rejecting her. 3 days is almost up, Mara said, watching her face like she could read every thought. Tomorrow at dawn, you leave. Where will you go? I don't know. Liar. You know exactly where you're going eventually. You're going back to them. Not yet, Nyra said. I'm not ready yet. I can barely control this. I'd get myself killed. Then get ready. Fast. Mara's expression turned serious, and for the first time Nyra saw something like actual concern there. The seal breaking will have sent out ripples through the magical currents. Anyone sensitive to that kind of power will have felt it. A phoenix awakening after generations of dormancy. That includes other packs, other creatures who might want to use you or kill you, and definitely your own bloodline. Your father probably felt it the moment the seal cracked. Cold spread through Nyra's chest, cutting through the warmth of the fire. So they'll come looking, to see if you survive the awakening. Most phoenix carriers don't, you know. The power usually kills them in the first manifestation, burns them to ash from the inside. Your father will want to see if you're dead. Mara leaned forward, and when they find you alive, they'll try to seal it again. Or kill you. Whichever is easier and more permanent. My own family would kill me? Your family spent generations trying to breed out the phoenix gene. You think they'll just accept it now that it's manifested in you? Now that you're walking proof that their careful genetic manipulation failed? Mara's laugh was bitter. Child, you're a threat to everything they've built. Their pack standing, their carefully maintained bloodline, their alliance with the Thornridges through your sister's mate bond. Of course, they'll try to eliminate you. It's what families do to problems they can't control. Me-chan. Then what am I supposed to do? Survive. Get stronger. Fast. Mara stood, moving to one of her shelves with that eerie, fluid grace. She pulled down a small leather pouch and tossed it to Nyra. Herbs. They'll mask your scent, make you harder to track magically and physically. Use them sparingly. Once they run out, you're on your own. Nyra caught the pouch, feeling the dried plants shift inside. Why give me this? Because, like I said, you're interesting, and I want to see how this story ends. Mara's smile was sharp as broken glass, sharp as the obsidian knife she'd used for the ritual. Will you become the weapon I think you can be? Will you burn down the world that rejected you, or will they crush you first, seal away your power again, make you into the broken thing they wanted you to be? She shrugged. Either way, it'll be entertaining to watch. You're insane. I'm old. There's a difference. Mara settled back onto her seat, a stone that had been shaped into something almost like a throne. Now sleep. Tomorrow you leave, and you'll need your strength. The first 24 hours after breaking a seal are the most dangerous. Your power will be unstable,
unpredictable. If you're not careful, you'll burn yourself out before you ever get your revenge. Nyra wanted to argue, wanted to say again that she wasn't planning revenge, but she was too tired to lie convincingly. She curled up in the small alcove Mara had given her, wrapped in blankets that smelled like smoke and thyme, and tried to sleep. Her dreams were full of fire. Nyra woke to the sound of wolves howling, close, too close. She bolted upright in the small alcove, her heart already racing, adrenaline flooding her system. Dawn light filtered through the cave entrance in shafts of gold, and Mara was standing there at the mouth of the cave, perfectly still, her head tilted like she was listening to something Nyra couldn't hear yet. "They're here," Mara said quietly, her voice carrying despite the whisper. "Who?" Nyra was already moving, grabbing her few possessions, shoving the herb pouch into her pocket. "Your father, and about a dozen pack wolves, all warriors by their scent." Mara didn't turn around, still watching the forest. "They tracked the magic signature from the seal breaking, followed it right to my doorstep like bloodhounds on a trail." Nyra's heart hammered against her ribs. "Can't you?" "I can't fight a whole pack of warriors. I'm powerful, but I'm not stupid, and I'm not interested in dying for you." Mara finally turned, and her black eyes were serious. "There's a back way out. Through the crystal chamber, follow the blue stones. It'll take you deeper into the deep wood, places even pack wolves won't follow. You'll be safe there. Temporarily." "What about you?" "I'll be fine. They won't touch me. They know better than to attack someone who lives in the deep wood, someone who predates their precious pack hierarchies. Old rules still apply here." Mara moved to her shelves, grabbed a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Take this. Food for 3 days. After that, you'll need to hunt or forage." The howls were getting closer. Nyra could hear voices now too, her father's, unmistakable even muffled by distance and stone. "Search everywhere. She was here. I can feel the signature. The seal broke right here. Elder Morvain said the seal breaking could have killed her, Alpha. We might be looking for a body. Then find me a body. I'm not leaving without proof one way or another." Nyra's blood ran cold. He wasn't here to rescue her. He was here to confirm she was dead. And if she wasn't, Mara grabbed her shoulder, those 2 long fingers digging in. "Go, now. Unless you want to test your 3 days of training against a dozen experienced warriors, you'd lose. Badly. And then all this would be for nothing." Mara pushed her toward the back of the cave. "Go, live, get stronger, and when you're ready—" She smiled, sharp and vicious. "Burn them all." The voices were right outside now. Nyra ran. Through the cave, through the chamber filled with glowing crystals that hummed with power as she passed, following blue stones that seemed to pulse with their own light, creating a path through the darkness. Behind her, she heard voices echoing through the stone. "Father, look at this. Burn marks everywhere." She was here. She survived. But how? The seal breaking should have... Find her. Now! Nyra ran faster. The back passage led to a narrow crevice, barely wide enough to squeeze through. She scraped her shoulders getting through, felt skin tear, but kept moving. On the other side, the forest was darker, older, the trees so massive they blocked out most of the morning light. The air was thick and strange, full of sounds that didn't quite match the creatures making them. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. She ran until the sounds of pursuit faded to nothing, swallowed by the density of the deep wood. She ran until she was alone in the deepest part of the forest, where even pack wolves feared to go, where the old rules still held sway. Then she collapsed against a tree, gasping for breath, and realized something that made her blood boil. Her father hadn't come to rescue her. He'd come to make sure she was dead. And if he'd found her alive, he would have killed her himself, or tried to seal her again, lock away her power, make her back into the broken thing they'd always wanted her to be. Rage flooded her chest, hot, pure, bright as the flames she could now summon. They wanted her gone? They thought she was a threat? Fine. She'd give them something to actually fear. Nyra pressed her bleeding palm against the ancient tree trunk and let fire flow from her hand into the bark. Not to destroy, to mark, to claim. To announce that she'd been here and survived despite everything they'd done to prevent it. The fire spread in a pattern across the trunk, burning her anger and determination into the wood in a design that came from instinct rather than thought. When she pulled her hand away,
The mark remained, burned deep into the living wood. A phoenix rising from flames, wings spread, head thrown back in defiance. Let them find that and know. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't the broken girl they'd thrown away. She was preparing. And when she came back, when she was ready, when she'd mastered this power, when she understood what she truly was, they would all burn for what they'd done. Every single one. The words echoed in Nyra's mind as she stared at the phoenix mark burned into the ancient tree. Her hand was still smoking, the scent of charred wood mixing with her own sweat and blood. The rage felt good, clean, purposeful in a way nothing else in her life had ever been. Better than the hollow emptiness that had lived in her chest for 20 years. She turned away from the tree and surveyed her situation with the cold clarity that came after adrenaline faded. She was alone in the deep wood with 3 days of food, a pouch of scent-masking herbs that would run out eventually, and a power she barely understood. Her father was hunting her with a dozen trained warriors who knew these forests almost as well as she did. She had no allies, no plan beyond survival, and no idea where to go next. Most people would call that hopeless. Nyra called it a starting point. She needed to get stronger, much stronger. Mara's 3 days of brutal training had taught her the basics: how to summon fire without burning herself alive, how to throw it with some semblance of accuracy, how to feel the power moving through her veins like molten metal. But basics wouldn't be enough against trained warriors, against pack politics and ancient hierarchies, against an entire society built specifically to crush people like her. She needed to master this power completely, needed to understand every facet of it, every limitation, every possibility. The deep wood stretched around her in every direction, ancient and patient and utterly indifferent to her survival. Somewhere in this wilderness were creatures that predated the wolf packs, places where old magic still pooled like water in stone basins, forgotten sanctuaries where knowledge had been abandoned when the packs consolidated their power. If she could find them, learn from them, take what she needed. A branch snapped behind her. Nyra spun, fire already flickering to life in her palms, heat spreading up her arms in patterns she was starting to recognize. A wolf stood at the edge of the clearing, not shifted, human form, but the predatory stillness gave him away immediately. Pack wolves moved differently than humans, carried themselves with an awareness of their own danger. He was young, maybe 19 or 20, with shaggy brown hair that looked like it had been cut with a knife, and eyes that hadn't quite committed to a color between green and gold. His clothes were rough, patched in multiple places, the kind rogues wore when they'd been surviving in the wilderness for months. But something about him felt different from the rogues who'd attacked her that first night, less desperate, more controlled. "Easy," he said, raising both hands slowly, palms out in the universal gesture of peace. "I'm not here to fight." "Then why are you here?" Nyra kept the fire burning, ready to throw. After everything that had happened, trust wasn't something she gave easily anymore. "I saw your mark." He nodded toward the tree behind her. The phoenix burned into ancient bark. Phoenix rising from ashes. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, advertising what you are in the deep wood where anything could see it. Maybe both. A smile flickered across his face, quick and genuine. "Yeah, I'm getting that impression." He took a careful step forward, moving slowly like approaching a spooked animal that might bolt or attack. "My name's Finn. I'm from the Blackwater Pack, or I was before they kicked me out 6 months ago for asking too many inconvenient questions." "What kind of questions?" "The kind about why the Alpha's son got to beat a 12-year-old kid half to death for disrespect while everyone just watched. The kind about why pack law only seems to apply to wolves who aren't related to leadership." Finn's voice held old bitterness, the kind that had settled into his bones and wouldn't leave. "Turns out loyalty matters more than justice in pack hierarchy. Turns out challenging someone with the right bloodline gets you exiled no matter how right you are. And you think I care about your sob story because you're Nyra Ashvale, the girl who got rejected at the bonding ceremony by Cale Thornridge in front of 300 witnesses." He said it matter-of-factly, without pity or mockery. News travels fast in the pack network. Heat flared in her chest, but Nyra kept her voice level. "News or entertainment? Both, honestly. Every pack from here to the Southern Territories is talking about it. Most of them are laughing, making jokes about the defective wolf who couldn't even keep her fated mate. Finn's expression darkened. Some think Cale Thornridge is an idiot for rejecting a mate bond. A few think he's smart for prioritizing bloodline strength over fate's choice. But they're all watching to see what happens next. And what do you think? I think fate chose you for a reason. And I think whatever that reason is, it scares the hell out of them. Finn gestured at the phoenix mark burned into the tree. Especially now that you're manifesting something that's definitely not a wolf. Something none of them have seen before. Nyra studied him carefully. He could be a scout sent by her father, a spy trying to get close to her, earn her trust, and then lead the warriors right to her. But his scent was wrong for Ashvale territory, carried different earth, different water, a different pack's markers. And the way he held himself, loose, ready to move, but not aggressive, didn't match the trained warriors who'd been hunting her. What do you want, Finn? To make a deal. He lowered his hand slowly, reading her body language, seeing that she wasn't going to immediately attack. I've been surviving in the deep wood for 6 months now. I know which areas are safe and which ones will kill you in minutes. I know which creatures will trade information or supplies instead of attacking on sight. I know where to find food and clean water. I know the old places, the forgotten sanctuaries that even pack wolves don't remember exist anymore. And you want what in exchange for this information? Training. His eyes flicked to the fire still dancing in her palms, reflected in his pupils like tiny suns. Whatever you are, whatever's inside you, it's powerful. I can feel it from here, and I'm not even that sensitive to magic, raw power radiating off you like heat from a furnace. He paused. If you're going to survive, if you're going to get strong enough to go back and make them regret everything they did to you, you'll need help. Someone to watch your back while you're learning. Someone who knows the territory and can keep you alive while you figure out how to use that power properly. Ishbamot sa siken. You want me to teach you to use fire? I want to learn from someone who isn't bound by pack politics and dominance hierarchies and all the bullshit rules that kept me trapped in a system I hated. Finn's voice was earnest now, dropping the careful, casual tone. I'm tired of being alone. Tired of just surviving day to day with no purpose. You're planning something. I can see it in your eyes. In the way you stand. In that mark you burned for everyone to see. You're not just running, you're preparing. Let me be part of it. Nyra let the fire die in her hands, studying him. You don't even know me. I know you got rejected in front of everyone who matters and walked away instead of begging for scraps. I know you survived 3 days in the deep wood completely alone without any pack support. I know you're manifesting power strong enough to leave permanent marks in trees that have stood for centuries. He met her eyes directly, not challenging, just honest. And I know you're not planning to just disappear and live quietly somewhere far away. You're going to go back eventually. And when you do, I want to be there to see the look on their faces when they realize what they threw away. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the fear, the rage still simmering in her chest, Nyra almost smiled. You're assuming I'll succeed. I'm betting on it. Finn extended his hand. So, deal? I help you survive and get stronger. You let me be part of whatever happens when you're ready to go back. Nyra looked at the offered hand. This could be a mistake. Could be a trap. Trusting a stranger, a rogue, someone who could betray her the moment it became convenient or profitable. But she was alone. And alone, she'd never become strong enough to matter, to be more than a story people told about the broken girl who'd been rejected. She took his hand. Deal. But if you betray me, if you sell me out to my father or anyone else, you'll burn me alive. Yeah, I got that impression pretty clearly. Finn grinned and it transformed his face from wary to genuinely pleased. Come on. There's a place about 3 miles north of here. Old sanctuary from before the pack consolidation. Abandoned for decades but still intact. Defensible, fresh water source, and protected by wards that'll make it much harder for your father's hunting party to track you magically. How do you know about it? 6 months in the deep wood teaches you all kinds of things the packs have forgotten. He started walking, then glanced back. You coming, or are you going to stand here admiring your artwork until the warriors find you? Nyra followed. The sanctuary was exactly what Finn had promised, and more. Carved into a hillside and half hidden by decades of overgrowth, It looked like it had been abandoned for a century instead of just a few decades. Vines covered most of the entrance, and small trees had taken root in cracks in the stonework. But the walls were solid, the roof mostly intact except for one corner where weather had broken through. And when Nyra stepped across the threshold, she felt the wards activate, a subtle shimmer in the air like walking through a soap bubble, a slight resistance that recognized her as not pack, but also not threat. Old magic, Finn explained, setting down the pack he'd retrieved from a hiding spot nearby. Wolf magic, actually, but from before the packs consolidated into the territories we have now, back when there were dozens of small clans instead of a few large power structures. Each clan had their own safe houses, their own sacred spaces, their own ways of doing things. He ran his hand along the wall almost reverently. Most wolves have forgotten these places even exist. They're too focused on the new hierarchies, the current territories, the politics of now. Nyra explored the space methodically. One large central room with a fire pit in the center, the stones blackened from centuries of use. Two smaller rooms off to the sides, sleeping quarters probably, with stone platforms that could be covered with bedding. Shelves carved directly into the walls, empty now but still functional. A well in the corner that, when she tested it by dropping a small stone, echoed with the sound of water far below. She lowered the bucket on its ancient rope, surprised the rope still held, and pulled up water that tasted clean and cold. "This is perfect," she admitted. "I know." Finn was already unpacking supplies, dried meat wrapped in cloth, foraged vegetables that looked fresh, a battered pot for cooking, flint and steel, a water skin. "I've been using it as a base for the last few months, but it's big enough for two easily, and frankly, I could use the company. Talking to yourself gets old after a while." He paused, looking at her seriously. "Plus, learning how to fight someone with fire magic seems like a pretty useful survival skill." "I can't teach you fire magic. It's not something you learn. It's bloodline specific. Phoenix carriers only, apparently." "Then teach me how to fight against someone who uses fire magic, how to defend, how to counter it, how to survive it." Finn met her eyes. "If you're going back to face your pack eventually, you'll need someone who can spar with you, push you to your limits, make you better through actual combat practice, instead of just solo training. I'll be that person." Nyra considered this carefully. He was right. Training alone with Mara had gotten her the basics, but she needed an opponent, someone to test her limits and find her weaknesses before an actual enemy did. "Fine. But we do this my way. If I say we stop immediately. If I say something's too dangerous to try, you're the one with fire powers. I'm not going to argue with your assessment of danger." Finn smiled. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow. Tonight, I need to actually sleep without worrying about warriors bursting in to kill me or drag me back." "Fair enough." Finn tossed her a blanket that smelled musty but was mostly intact. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll start making you into something they can't ignore or dismiss." Nyra took the blanket and claimed one of the smaller rooms. She lay down on the stone platform, wrapped in the musty blanket, and expected to lie awake for hours replaying everything that had happened. Instead, she fell asleep almost immediately. For the first time in weeks, she felt almost safe. The next 6 weeks blurred together in a rhythm of training, hunting, survival, and pushing her limits until they broke and reformed stronger. Finn was as good as his word about knowing the Deepwood. He knew which paths were safe to travel and which ones led to territorial creatures that would attack on sight. He knew which plants were edible and which would kill you within hours. He knew how to track deer and rabbits, how to set snares, how to preserve meat for days without it spoiling. He taught her how to move silently through the forest, how to read tracks and signs, how to fight with a knife when fire wasn't an option or would give away her position. In return, Nyra taught him how to fight someone who could throw fire. "Again," she said one afternoon 2 weeks into their partnership, flames wreathing her hands in patterns that came more naturally now. Finn circled her in the clearing they'd claimed as their primary training ground, about half a mile from the sanctuary. He was faster now than he'd been at the start, his movements more confident, his reflexes sharper from constant practice. Sweat dripped down his face despite the cool autumn air. "You're not actually going to set me on fire, right? We've established that boundary?" "Not if you dodge properly," Nyra grinned, "but your shirt might get singed if you're slow." She threw a controlled fireball, Not enough to seriously hurt, but enough to motivate. Finn rolled left, the fireball scorching the ground where he'd been standing a second earlier. He came up fast, closing the distance between them with his knife drawn, trying to get inside her range before she could throw again. Nyra swept his legs with a move he'd taught her, dropped him hard onto his back, and had fire at his throat before he could recover. "Dead," she said simply. "Damn it!" But Finn didn't sound discouraged. If anything, he sounded more determined. "Again, I almost had you that time. You were 3 feet away from having me. That's not almost. Closer than yesterday." He had a point there. They went until the sun started setting, until Finn's reflexes began to slow from exhaustion and Nyra's control started to waver. Then they'd return to the sanctuary, cook whatever they'd hunted or gathered, and eat together by the fire while comparing notes and planning the next day's training. "You're getting stronger," Finn observed one night about 3 weeks into their partnership. He was cleaning his knife, checking the edge for damage. "The fire comes faster now, burns hotter when you want it to. You're not thinking about it as much. It's becoming instinct." "It's still not enough." "Enough for what?" "You could probably take on 3 or 4 normal wolves now without much trouble. I don't want to take on normal wolves. I want to be able to walk into Ashvale territory and make them see me as a threat instead of a broken girl who got lucky with some fire tricks." Nyra stared into the flames of their cooking fire. "I want them to understand what they threw away. You're already a threat, a serious one. You just don't see it yet because you're comparing yourself to what you think you should be instead of what you actually are." Finn set down the knife and looked at her seriously. "But you will. You'll see it when you're ready." He was right about that, though Nyra didn't fully understand it yet. By the 4th week, she could maintain fire for hours without exhausting herself. She'd burned through trees as thick as her torso, melted stones, created flames hot enough to make the air shimmer and warp in visible waves. By the 5th week, she could shape fire with precision, not just throw fireballs, but create walls of flame that moved with her will, whips of fire that could strike with accuracy, barriers that nothing could cross without burning. By the 6th week, she'd stopped thinking of herself as the broken Ashvale daughter. She was becoming something else entirely. "There's something you should know," Finn said one morning while they were preparing for another training session. His tone was serious enough that Nyra immediately paid attention. She looked up from wrapping her hands. She'd started doing that after accidentally burning herself during a particularly intense training session. "What?" "There's been talk in the outer territories. I picked it up when I went to trade for supplies yesterday." Finn had developed a network of contacts. Other rogues, some outcasts, a few creatures who preferred trade to violence. Rumors about a fire witch living in the deep wood. Powerful enough to burn permanent marks into ancient trees. Dangerous enough that Marcus Ashvale himself is hunting her with his best warriors. "Fire witch?" Nyra tested the term. It felt wrong somehow, too limited. "That's what they're calling you. They don't know about Phoenix bloodlines. Most wolves think that's extinct or just legend, so they're inventing explanations that make sense to them. Some think you're a witch who made a deal with fire demons. Others think you're a curse the Deepwood sent to punish the packs for forgetting the old ways." Finn's expression was serious. "But the important part is that you're becoming known. People are talking, and not just your pack." "Other packs?" "Other packs. Rogues looking for someone strong to follow. Even some of the old creatures who usually ignore pack politics completely are taking notice." He paused. "You're becoming a story, Nyra. A legend in the making. The question is what kind of story you want to be, the cautionary tale or the conqueror." Before Nyra could answer, before she could process what that meant, the wards around the sanctuary shimmered violently and shattered. Both of them were on their feet instantly, Nyra's hands already wreathed in flame, Finn's knife appearing in his hand like magic. 3 wolves stepped through the entrance of the sanctuary. Not her father's warriors. These were different, older, more scarred, with the controlled violence of professional soldiers who'd seen real combat. Their clothes were dark gray, marked with a symbol Nyra didn't recognize, a silver crescent moon over crossed swords. The one in front was a woman, maybe 40, with silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a severe braid and eyes like winter ice. She carried herself with absolute authority, the kind that came from years of command. "Nyra Ashvale," she said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who expected to be obeyed. "I am Commander Reeve of the Silverstone Guard. I'm here to offer you a choice. Nyra's fire burned brighter. How did you break the wards? They're keyed to specific bloodlines. We didn't break them. We walked through them because we're keyed to these sanctuaries. They were built by our ancestors before the pack consolidation, before territories were drawn and power was centralized. Reeves' eyes flicked to the fire in Nyra's hands, assessing, calculating. Impressive control. The rumors don't do you justice. What choice? Nyra kept the fire burning, ready to attack or defend. The Silverstone Pack controls the Eastern Territories. We're the largest pack in the region, larger even than the Northern Alliance your father belongs to. We have resources, training facilities, the best warriors in 3 territories. Reeve took a careful step forward, hands visible and empty. We've heard about you, about your rejection, about your awakening, about your power. We're very interested. Interested in what? In recruiting you. Reeve's smile was sharp and calculating. The pack hierarchies are changing. The old families are losing their grip on power, and new powers are emerging to challenge them. A phoenix carrier, if that's what you truly are and not just a fire witch like the rumors say, would be an incredibly valuable asset. Join us, and we'll give you protection from your father's hunters, resources to develop your power properly, training from the best combat instructors in the Eastern Territories. And in exchange, you serve the Silverstone Pack. Use your power for our benefit and advancement. Help us challenge the Northern Alliance's dominance over the Council. Help us reshape the power structure that's been stagnant for too long. Reeves' eyes gleamed with ambition. You want revenge on the pack that rejected you? Join us, and we'll give you the army to take it. We'll give you the support to burn them all. Nyra's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, the shortcut she'd been half hoping for in her darker moments. Real training from experts, real resources, real political power behind her. But something felt wrong. What happens to me after you've used my power to conquer the North? Reeves' expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. You'd be honored, given a place of importance in the new hierarchy we build. As a weapon, you can point at your enemies whenever it's convenient. As an asset, we value highly. No, Nyra said flatly. Reeves' eyes narrowed dangerously. Excuse me? I said no. I'm not interested in being anyone's weapon. Not yours, not my father's, not anyone's. The fire in her hands burned brighter, hotter, responding to her rising anger. You want to use me to fight your battles? To be your personal attack dog? And then what? Keep me on a leash forever? Discard me when I'm no longer useful? That's not protection. That's just a prettier cage than the one I escaped. You're making a serious mistake, Reeves said, her voice going cold and hard. We're offering you a future. Safety. Power. Without us, you're just a girl alone in the woods playing with fire she doesn't fully understand. How long do you think you'll last before your father finds you? Before some other pack decides you're too dangerous to leave alive and free? Long enough. Long enough for what? To become strong enough that I don't need you or anyone else. Reeves' hand moved to the sword at her hip, and Nyra noticed for the first time that it wasn't normal steel. It shimmered with magic, enchanted for something specific. That's very unfortunate. We would have strongly preferred to recruit you willingly, to have you join us as an ally rather than an enemy. But if you won't join us, we absolutely cannot let you join anyone else. You understand the position this puts us in. You're going to try to kill me? Nyra almost laughed at the absurdity. For refusing your job offer? We're going to neutralize a potential threat before you become someone else's weapon against us, before you grow strong enough to be truly dangerous. Reeve drew her sword, definitely not steel, something that shimmered and seemed to drink in the firelight. Last chance, girl. Join us or die here. Choose. Finn moved to Nyra's side, knife ready. She's not alone. A rogue? That's your backup? That's what you're relying on? Reeve shook her head like she was disappointed. Stand down, boy. This doesn't concern you. Walk away now, and you'll live. Actually, it concerns me quite a bit. Finn's voice was steady, despite facing 3 trained warriors. You break into our sanctuary, threaten my partner, and expect me to just walk away and let it happen? Not a chance. Reeve sighed like this was all very tedious. Fine. Kill them both. Make it quick. The 2 warriors behind her shifted, bones cracking audibly, fur sprouting, muscles reforming, until 2 massive wolves stood in the sanctuary. Bigger than normal wolves, bigger than any wolf Nyra had ever seen. Enhanced somehow, bred or magically augmented for size and strength and violence. This was going to be very bad. "Run," Finn whispered urgently. "I'll hold them as long as I can. Give you time to—" "No!" Nyra stepped forward, fire spreading up her arms, across her shoulders, into her hair. "I'm done running from people who think they can control me." She'd been training for 6 weeks, learning control, learning precision, learning to shape fire into tools and weapons and shields. Time to see if it was enough. The first wolf lunged with terrifying speed. Nyra threw up a wall of flame between them. The wolf yelped and skidded back, fur singed, but not seriously hurt. These weren't normal wolves. They had some kind of protection against magic, some enhancement or enchantment that let them shrug off attacks that should have crippled or killed them. The second wolf circled right, going for Finn with single-minded focus. "Watch out!" Nyra redirected her fire, trying to create a barrier, but the wolf was fast, faster than she'd expected it to be. Finn met it head-on with his knife flashing. He wasn't strong enough to kill an enhanced wolf in direct combat, but he was fast enough and skilled enough to keep it busy, to dodge and weave and slash at exposed flanks, to be annoying enough that it couldn't ignore him and go after Nyra. Reeve advanced on Nyra directly, that magical sword cutting through her flames like they were tissue paper. "Impressive fire control for someone self-taught," Reeve said almost conversationally, like they weren't actively trying to kill each other. "But ultimately useless against someone who knows how to counter elemental magic. Did you really think you were the first fire user we'd ever encountered?" She swung the sword in a precise arc. Nyra barely dodged, felt the blade pass inches from her throat, close enough that she felt the wind of its passage. She tried to throw fire directly at Reeve's face, but the woman's sword absorbed it somehow, drank it in like a sponge, left nothing but harmless smoke. "Enchanted blade," Reeve explained, pressing her advantage. "Specifically designed to counter and absorb elemental magic. We've been hunting fire witches for 3 generations. You think we'd be unprepared?" Nyra was losing. She could feel it with growing certainty. Reeve was too skilled, too experienced, too well-equipped specifically to counter exactly what Nyra could do. The enhanced wolves were keeping Finn busy and bleeding, preventing him from helping. This wasn't a fight she could win, not with control, not with precision, not with the carefully measured techniques Mara had taught her, but maybe with raw power, maybe with the full fury of what she actually was instead of what she'd been trying to be. Nyra stopped trying to control the fire, stopped shaping it, directing it, keeping it contained and manageable. She just let it out, all of it. Everything that had been building inside her since the seal cracked, since she'd first tasted this power. Fire erupted from her body in an explosion of heat and light and absolute fury. Not controlled flames, not carefully shaped weapons, just pure elemental rage. Phoenix fire unleashed without restraint or limitation. The sanctuary became an inferno in seconds. Reeve screamed and threw herself backward, her enchanted sword melting in her hands like wax, dripping molten metal onto the stone floor. The 2 enhanced wolves yelped in genuine pain and fled, their magically augmented bodies no match for temperatures hot enough to make stone crack and glow red. And Nyra stood in the center of it all, burning. Her clothes should have incinerated instantly. Her skin should have charred and peeled. Her hair should have burned away. She should have died screaming. Instead, she felt more alive than she'd ever felt in her entire life. The fire burned around her, but not against her. It was part of her, an extension of her will, her rage, her absolute refusal to be anyone's victim or weapon or tool ever again. When the flames finally died, when she pulled them back into herself with an effort that left her shaking and exhausted, the sanctuary was destroyed. Walls cracked and blackened, roof collapsed on one side. Everything that could burn reduced to ash and cinders. Finn was pressed against the far wall, eyes wide with shock, and something that might have been fear or awe or both. Reeve and her warriors were gone. Run off into the forest or burn to nothing, Nyra didn't know and didn't particularly care. She collapsed to her knees, gasping for air, her whole body trembling with exhaustion. "Nyra?" Finn's voice was cautious, careful. Are you still you?" "I don't know," she admitted honestly, because something fundamental had changed in that moment when she'd stopped controlling the fire and just became it.
Something had shifted inside her chest, in the place where the seal had been cracked. The seal was gone now, completely gone, burned away from the inside. Whatever had been locked inside her for 20 years was fully awake, fully present, fully integrated with who she was. And it was hungry for more. "We need to leave," Finn said, moving to her side carefully, still treating her like something that might explode or attack. That much magic, that much raw power released all at once. Every sensitive creature in the deep wood felt it. Your father definitely felt it. Hell, Pax 3 territories away probably felt it like an earthquake. "Let them come," Nyra said, and her voice sounded different even to her own ears. Rougher, deeper, more certain. "Nyra!"
Let them come. She looked at him, and she could feel her eyes glowing, could see the red reflection in his face. "I'm done hiding, done running, done letting other people decide what I am and what I'm worth and where I belong." "What are you going to do?" Nyra stood slowly, her body still smoking, still radiating heat that made the air around her shimmer and warp. "I'm going home," she said. "You're not ready. They'll kill you. I'm ready enough." She turned to face north, toward Ashvale territory, toward the pack that had rejected and abandoned her. "They cast me out because I was broken. Fine. Let's show them what broken actually looks like when it stops trying to be fixed." Finn stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. "You're absolutely insane." "Probably. This is going to get us both killed. Maybe. But at least we'll die doing something that matters instead of just surviving. When do we leave?" Nyra looked at the destroyed sanctuary, at the ashes of the safe life she'd been trying to build here in hiding, at the phoenix mark still visible on the distant tree, untouched by the flames she'd unleashed. "Now," she said, "we leave right now. No more preparation. No more waiting. We go while I'm still angry enough to see this through." She started walking north, and she didn't look back at the ruins behind her. Behind her, Finn grabbed what supplies had survived the inferno and hurried to catch up, still grinning like this was the best idea he'd heard in months. And in the distance, carried on wind that tasted like smoke and ash and burning certainty, wolves began to howl. They were coming, all of them, her father's warriors. The Silverstone pack seeking revenge, maybe others who'd heard the stories and wanted to see if they were true. Good. Let them all come. Nyra Ashvale was done being prey, done being the victim, done being the broken girl everyone pitied or dismissed. It was time to show them what a phoenix could do when you gave it a reason to burn the whole world down. They walked for 2 days straight, stopping only when exhaustion forced them to rest for a few hours. Finn knew the fastest routes through the deep wood, the paths that would take them to the border of Ashvale territory without crossing into areas claimed by other packs or creatures that would kill them on sight. Nyra barely spoke during the journey. She was focused inward, feeling the power that now moved through her veins without restraint. The seal was completely gone, and the phoenix fire responded to her thoughts like an extension of her own body. She could feel it waiting, patient and hungry, ready to burn whatever she pointed it at. "We're close," Finn said on the morning of the third day. They stood at the edge of a ridge overlooking a valley that Nyra recognized immediately. The Ashvale hunting grounds. She'd walked these forests as a child, back when she'd still believed her wolf would come, when she'd still thought she had a future with the pack. "I can smell it," she said. "Home." Except it wasn't home anymore, was it? Home didn't hunt you. Home didn't try to kill you to cover up its own fears. So what's the plan? We just walk in and start burning things? Finn checked his knife, though they both knew it would be almost useless against what they were about to face. "No. I'm going to give them a chance first." A chance to what? To acknowledge what they did. To admit they were wrong. Nyra looked at the valley below, at the smoke rising from the pack's main compound. "I'm going to walk in there, and I'm going to demand they see me. Really see me. Not as the broken daughter they threw away, but as what I actually am. And when they refuse, when they try to kill you or seal your power again, then I burn it all." She said it calmly, like discussing the weather. "Every building, every symbol of their precious hierarchy. I'll leave the people alive. I'm not a murderer, but I'll destroy everything they built on the foundation of my humiliation." Finn studied her face for a long moment. "You've changed. You know that, right?
You're not the girl who got rejected 6 weeks ago. No, I'm not. Nyra started down the ridge. I'm what they made me when they decided I wasn't worth keeping. They reached the border markers an hour later, stones carved with the Ashvale sigil, marking the official edge of pack territory. Nyra stepped across without hesitation. Immediately she felt eyes on them. Sentries hidden in the trees, their scents carried on the wind. At least 4, maybe more.
Nyra Ashvale,
A voice called from the forest. A wolf stepped out, young, maybe 16, with the nervous energy of someone given responsibility too early. You're trespassing on pack lands. You were exiled. I wasn't exiled. I left. Nyra kept walking toward the compound. There's a difference. You need to turn around, now, or I'm authorized to use force. No, you're not. She didn't even slow down. You're authorized to report my presence to my father and let him decide. So do that. Tell Marcus Ashvale his daughter's home, and she'd like to have a conversation. The young sentry hesitated, clearly torn between his orders and his instinct not to attack someone radiating the kind of power Nyra was putting off. I'll need you to wait here while I'm not waiting. I'm walking to the main compound. You can escort me, report me, or get out of my way. Choose fast. The sentry looked at Finn, then back at Nyra, then apparently decided this was above his pay grade. He shifted, bones cracking, fur spreading, and a russet wolf took off running toward the compound. That went well, Finn muttered. He made the smart choice. They walked through the forest that had been Nyra's childhood playground. Everything looked smaller than she remembered, less intimidating. Or maybe she'd just gotten bigger in ways that had nothing to do with physical size. By the time they reached the clearing where the main compound sat, there were at least 30 wolves waiting for them. Marcus Ashvale stood at the front, and Nyra felt something cold settle in her chest at the sight of her father. He looked older than she remembered, more gray in his hair, more lines around his eyes. But his stance was the same, rigid, controlled, projecting authority he'd spent 40 years earning. Beside him stood Elder Morvain, her ancient face unreadable. And next to her, looking pale and shocked, was Sarah. Her twin sister was wearing the necklace Kael had given her the night of the bonding ceremony, marking her as the chosen mate, the replacement. Nyra felt fire flicker in her palms and forced it down. Not yet. Nyra. Her father's voice was carefully neutral. You shouldn't be here. And yet here I am. She stopped about 20 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to have room to move if this went bad. We need to talk. There's nothing to discuss. You left pack territory after you came hunting me with warriors to either kill me or seal away my power again. Don't pretend this is about me breaking rules. Fire danced between her fingers now, small flames that she didn't bother hiding. You felt the seal break. You knew I survived, and instead of checking if I was okay, instead of trying to understand what was happening to me, you brought soldiers to make sure I was dead or could be controlled again. Marcus's jaw tightened. Around them, the gathered wolves shifted nervously, scenting the power radiating off Nyra. The seal was for your protection, Elder Morvain said, her ancient voice carrying across the clearing. The Phoenix bloodline is dangerous, unstable. It destroys those who carry it. We sealed it to save your life. Bullshit, Nyra's voice cracked like a whip. You sealed it because you were afraid of power you couldn't control, couldn't dominate through pack hierarchy. You'd rather I was broken and weak than strong and different. You don't understand the history. Then explain it to me, right now, in front of everyone. Nyra gestured at the gathered wolves. Tell them why the Ashvale family has been sealing away Phoenix carriers for generations. Tell them why you'd rather have a daughter with no wolf than a daughter with fire. Silence. Heavy and damning. That's what I thought. Nyra looked at her father. You can't explain it because the truth is simple. You were scared. Scared of what I might become. Scared of losing control. Scared that I'd be powerful in a way that didn't fit your nice, neat pack hierarchy. Nyra, please. Her mother's voice, from somewhere in the crowd. Diana pushed through, tears already streaming. Please, just come home. We can work through this. We can find a solution. A solution? Like sealing my power again? Like pretending I'm still broken? Nyra shook her head. No, I'm done with your solutions. Then why are you here? Marcus asked. If you're not coming back, if you won't accept our help, why return at all? Because I want you to admit what you did was wrong. I want you to stand in front of the pack and acknowledge that you threw away your own daughter because she was inconvenient, because she didn't fit the mold you wanted. I did what was necessary to protect. Protect who? Me? Or your reputation? Nyra's hands ignited fully, flames crawling up to her elbows. You sealed away my power at birth without my consent. You let me spend 20 years thinking I was defective. You stood silent while the pack mocked me. And when I finally manifested what I actually am, you came hunting me like an animal. You're dangerous, Marcus said flatly. Unstable. That display 6 weeks ago in the Deepwood, you nearly burned down half the forest. You have no control. I have perfect control. Nyra raised her hand, and fire spiraled up in a tight helix, dancing in complex patterns before forming into a perfect sphere that hovered above her palm. I've trained every day since the seal broke. I've mastered what you were too afraid to let me even attempt. She let the fire die. But you're right about one thing. I am dangerous. Dangerous to anyone who tries to cage me again. Movement in the crowd. Kale stepped forward, and Nyra's heart did something complicated and unwelcome in her chest. He looked exactly the same. Strong, confident, the future alpha everyone expected him to be. But there was something in his eyes when he looked at her. Regret? Curiosity? Fear? Nyra, he said, his voice careful. I know things ended badly between us. Badly? She almost laughed. You rejected me in front of 300 people and chose my sister. That's not badly. That's complete annihilation. I was following pack law. The bloodline requirements were bullshit and you know it. You rejected me because I couldn't shift, because I was defective in a way that embarrassed you. Fire flickered in her eyes, not metaphorically, actual flames dancing in her pupils. But I wasn't defective, I was just sealed, and now I'm free. Kale's hand moved unconsciously to his chest, to the place where a mate bond should have been. The bond, when it broke, I felt… What? Regret? Loss? Nyra's voice was harsh. Good. Live with it, because I've moved past needing validation from someone who threw me away the moment I wasn't convenient. Sarah spoke for the first time, her voice small. Nyra, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought I was helping. Helping? Nyra turned to her twin. You took my mate. You stepped into my place before the rejection ceremony was even finished. You helped yourself, Sarah. Don't pretend it was altruistic. I loved him. You loved the status, the position, being the chosen daughter for once instead of the shadow. Nyra's voice softened slightly, because despite everything, this was still her sister. I don't hate you, Sarah, but I don't forgive you either. A new voice cut through the tension. Enough of this drama. Alpha Garrett Thornridge stepped forward, his massive frame radiating authority. Kale's father, the pack alpha, the man who'd approved her rejection without a second thought. You've made your point, girl. You survived. You've got some fire tricks. You're angry. We understand. Now what do you want? Recognition. Nyra met his eyes without flinching. I want the pack to acknowledge that the rejection was wrong, that sealing Phoenix carriers for generations was wrong, that building your entire hierarchy on the suppression of anyone different is wrong. And if we refuse, then I demonstrate exactly how wrong you were to throw me away. Garrett's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Nyra let fire spiral up both arms now, bright enough that several wolves stepped back. I'm giving you a choice. Acknowledge the truth, or I burn down every symbol of your power until there's nothing left but ash and the memory of your mistakes. You'd attack your own pack? Marcus asked, and he sounded genuinely shocked. You stopped being my pack the day you came hunting me with warriors. You stopped being my father the day you chose your reputation over your daughter. Nyra's voice was steady, despite the emotion churning in her chest. I'm giving you more courtesy than you gave me. I'm offering a choice instead of just destroying everything. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some wolves looked uncertain, others angry. A few, younger ones mostly, looked almost impressed. This is insane, Garrett said. One girl with fire magic thinks she can challenge 2 established packs. 3, a new voice called. Nyra turned, surprised. A group of wolves emerged from the forest behind her, at least 20, all bearing the marks of different packs. and at their head was a woman Nyra recognized from Finn's descriptions. Commander Reeve. Alive, scarred from the burns Nyra had given her, but very much alive. The Silverstone Pack has an interest in this conversation, Reeve said, her voice carrying across the clearing. She looked at Nyra with a mixture of respect and wariness. We came to kill you last month. You burned through our best warriors like they were nothing. That kind of power deserves respect, not suppression. What are you doing here? Garrett demanded. Offering support to someone who might actually shake up the stagnant power structure you've maintained for too long. Reeve gestured to the wolves behind her. These are representatives from 6 different packs. Word has spread about the Phoenix Carrier, about the girl who survived rejection, escaped hunters, and manifested power the packs thought was extinct. People are interested. Interested in what? In whether she succeeds. Reeve looked at Nyra. I'm not asking you to join Silverstone anymore. I'm just saying that if you're going to challenge the established order, you won't be alone. Some of us are tired of the old hierarchies, tired of power being concentrated in bloodlines that suppress anyone different. Marcus's face had gone pale. This is pack business. Outsiders have no... Pack business became everyone's business when you started hunting a Phoenix Carrier through the deep wood. Reeve's smile was sharp. When you sent warriors into neutral territory to kill a girl whose only crime was being born different. That's not pack justice, that's tyranny. The crowd was murmuring louder now. Nyra could see the division forming, older wolves standing firm with the current leadership, younger ones looking uncertain, questioning. I'll ask one more time, Nyra said, her voice cutting through the noise. Will you acknowledge what you did was wrong? Will you accept that I'm not defective, that I never was, that you sealed away my power because you were afraid of it? Marcus looked at his daughter for a long moment. His face was a war of emotions, pride, fear, anger, regret, none of them quite winning. No, he said finally. I can't, because I still believe the seal was necessary. I still believe Phoenix Carriers are too dangerous to control. I still believe... Fire exploded from Nyra in a wave. Not at the people. She'd promised herself she wouldn't kill unless forced to. But the pack house behind Marcus, the symbol of Ashvale authority, the building where pack laws were decided, where she'd been judged defective over and over, that was fair game. The fire hit the structure like a tidal wave. Wood and stone that had stood for 100 years ignited instantly, flames consuming the building in seconds. The pack's sacred records, the historical documents, the symbols of their power, all of it turned to ash. Wolves scattered, shouting in alarm. Some shifted, instinct taking over. But no one attacked Nyra. They were too shocked, too afraid of what she might do next. That's one building, Nyra said calmly as the pack house collapsed in a shower of sparks. I can keep going. The ceremonial lodge next. Then the Alpha's residence. Then the training grounds. I'll burn every physical symbol of your authority until there's nothing left but wolves standing in a clearing wondering why they ever thought bloodlines mattered more than people. Stop, Diana was screaming, her beautiful face twisted with horror. Stop, please. You're destroying everything. Everything you built on lies. Nyra turned to her mother. Everything you maintained by suppressing daughters who didn't fit your perfect vision. I'm not destroying your pack, Mother. I'm destroying the cage you built and called it tradition. Enough. Garrett's voice cracked like thunder. He shifted in an instant, bones reforming, body expanding, until a massive wolf stood where the Alpha had been. Easily twice the size of a normal wolf, his Alpha genetics on full display. He lunged at Nyra. She didn't move. Fire erupted from her skin in a sphere of white-hot flame. Garrett hit it and yelped, thrown backward, fur singed black, steam rising from his body. He shifted back to human, naked and burned and furious. You attacked an Alpha. I defended myself from an Alpha who attacked first. Nyra's voice was ice. Anyone else want to try? Anyone else want to test whether pack hierarchy means anything against someone who doesn't bow to it? Silence. Then Kale stepped forward, putting himself between his burned father and Nyra. His hands were raised, non-threatening. Nyra, please, you've made your point. Everyone sees it now. You're powerful. You're not defective. You were never broken. We were wrong to reject you, wrong to seal your power. Is that what you want to hear? From you? No. She met his eyes. Because you don't mean it. You're just saying what you think will stop me from burning down more buildings. You're not actually sorry.
You're just scared. Maybe I am scared. Maybe everyone here is scared. But that doesn't mean I don't regret how things happened. Kale took a step closer. The mate bond, even rejected, I can still feel the echo of it. And when it broke, when you accepted the rejection, it felt like losing something I didn't know I had, like a future I never got to see. Then you understand exactly how I felt when you rejected me. Yes, he said it simply, honestly. I do now. Nyra studied his face, looking for deception, for manipulation, but all she saw was genuine regret and the kind of dawning understanding that came from experiencing the consequences of your own choices. It doesn't change anything, she said. The bond is broken. You chose Sarah. You made your decision. I know, but I can still acknowledge I was wrong. Kale looked at the crowd, at his father recovering from burns, at Nyra Ashvale, watching his daughter with horror and awe mixed together. She's right. All of you know it. We rejected her for not fitting our standards, and instead of being broken like we expected, she became this. He gestured at Nyra, at the fire still dancing around her. We created our own enemy by refusing to accept someone different. More murmurs. More wolves looking uncertain. Elder Morvain stepped forward, leaning heavily on her staff. The Phoenix bloodline was sealed for good reason. Every carrier in recorded history has either died young or gone mad with power. We were trying to protect you, child. By making me think I was nothing, by letting me suffer for 20 years? Nyra shook her head. Your protection was cruelty dressed up as care. And maybe you believed you were helping, Elder. Maybe you all believed it, but you were wrong. The old woman studied her for a long moment. Then slowly she bowed her head. Perhaps we were. Perhaps fear made us cruel when we should have been compassionate. Morvain looked up, and there were tears in her ancient eyes. I'm sorry, Nyra Ashvale. Sorry for the seal. Sorry for not fighting harder to help you when you struggled. Sorry for being too afraid to see what you might become. It wasn't everything Nyra wanted, but it was something. The seal can't be undone, Morvain continued. It burned away when you released your full power. But I can offer you knowledge. Records of other Phoenix carriers, techniques they used, warnings they left behind. Help you avoid the mistakes that destroyed those who came before you. Nyra felt something loosen in her chest. You'd help me? After everything? I'm old enough to admit when I'm wrong, and you're powerful enough that we can't stop you even if we wanted to. So yes, I'll help you master what you are, instead of trying to suppress it. The elder's smile was sad. It's what I should have offered 20 years ago. Marcus still stood silent, his face unreadable. Father, Nyra said quietly, I need to hear it from you. I can't give you what you want. His voice was rough, strained. I can't say the seal was wrong because I still believe it saved your life. But I can say that losing you, watching you walk away, that was wrong. That hurt in ways I didn't expect. You watched me walk away after coming to hunt me with warriors. I watched you walk away after you survived something that should have killed you, and I felt proud. Terrified, but proud. Marcus's facade cracked slightly. You're my daughter. I wanted to protect you. I did what I thought was right, but I'm starting to understand that protection can be its own kind of cage. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't acceptance. But it was acknowledgement, and that was more than Nyra had expected. She let the fire die completely, the flames retreating back into her skin. I'm not coming back, she said. Not to live here, not to rejoin the pack. I can't be part of a structure that would rather break its children than bend its rules. Where will you go? Diana asked, her voice small. I don't know yet, but somewhere I can be what I am without apologizing for it. Nyra looked at the gathered wolves, at the representatives from other packs, at Finn, standing quietly at her side. I'm going to figure out what a Phoenix carrier can actually do when she's not being suppressed. And maybe I'll build something new. Something that doesn't require people to be broken to fit in. That sounds like revolution, Garrett said, recovered enough to stand, though his burns were still angry and red. Maybe it is. Nyra smiled, and it wasn't entirely kind. You had a chance to accept someone different, and you rejected it. So yes, maybe I'll build something that competes with your precious hierarchy. Maybe I'll show all the other defective wolves that there's a place for them too. Reeve laughed, the sound sharp and delighted. If you do, Silverstone will support you.
We're tired of the old ways, too. This is madness, Marcus said. You can't just— I already did. Nyra turned to leave, then paused. She looked back at Sarah, who'd been silent through most of this, standing beside Kael with tears streaming down her face. Take care of him, Nyra said, and be happy. I mean that. Nyra, we're not friends. We might never be again, but you're still my sister, and I don't wish you pain. Nyra's smile was genuine this time. Just don't expect forgiveness anytime soon. She walked out of the compound with Finn beside her and 20 wolves from Silverstone falling in behind them like an honor guard. Behind her, the pack house burned, smoke rising into the sky like a signal fire. Nyra Ashvale had come home. She'd made them see her, and now she was leaving on her own terms, powerful and unbroken, and finally free. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for it. They traveled east for 3 days, the Silverstone wolves maintaining a respectful distance behind Nyra and Finn. Commander Reeve led them toward what she called neutral ground, a stretch of unclaimed territory between 3 major pack regions where the old rules didn't apply and new ones could be written. This is where you'll build it, Reeve said on the 3rd evening as they crested a hill overlooking a valley. Below, Nyra could see the ruins of what had once been a settlement, stone foundations, collapsed walls, the skeleton of something that had mattered once. Build what exactly? Nyra asked. Whatever you want. A sanctuary for wolves who don't fit the traditional packs. A training ground for those with abilities the hierarchies don't recognize. A place where power isn't determined by bloodline and dominance. Reeve's smile was sharp. A revolution, if you're ambitious enough. Nyra looked at the ruins and felt something stir in her chest. Not fire this time, something else. Purpose, maybe. Or possibility. I'm not a leader, she said. You burned down a pack house and walked away with an honor guard. You're already leading whether you accept it or not. Finn had been quiet for most of the journey, but now he moved to stand beside her. Question is whether you lead towards something or just away from what hurt you. He had a point. Over the next 2 months, word spread faster than Nyra expected. Wolves started showing up, rogues who'd been exiled for questioning authority, young wolves who'd manifested abilities their packs didn't understand, even a few who'd simply grown tired of pack politics and wanted something different. They came in 1s and 2s at first, then in groups. A girl named Asha who could manipulate water but had been cast out because water magic wasn't part of traditional wolf abilities. 2 brothers who'd been exiled for refusing to fight each other for pack rank. An older wolf named Torin, who'd lost his mate and couldn't stomach staying in a pack that told him to get over it and bond with someone else. Each one had a story. Each one had been broken by the system in different ways. Nyra gave them the one thing no one else had: acceptance. You don't have to prove anything here, she told Asha on her first day. Your water manipulation is useful, beautiful, even. Use it however feels right. But what's my rank? Where do I fit in the hierarchy? Asha looked genuinely confused by the lack of structure. There isn't one. Not like you're used to. Nyra gestured at the growing settlement. We work together, share skills, make decisions as a group. If someone's better at something, we listen to their expertise, but nobody's automatically in charge just because of bloodline or strength. That'll never work, Asha said, but she stayed anyway. Finn became Nyra's right hand without any formal discussion. He organized patrols, managed supplies, settled disputes with a combination of humor and common sense that people responded to. He never asked for authority. People just started following his lead because he made things work. Elder Morvain had been true to her word. She'd sent records, ancient texts about phoenix carriers, techniques for controlling the fire, warnings about the dangers of letting the power consume you. Nyra studied them late into the night, learning from the mistakes of those who'd come before. The texts were sobering. Most phoenix carriers had died young, burned out from the inside by power they couldn't fully control. Others had gone mad, lost themselves in the fire until they couldn't remember who they'd been before. You're different, Finn said one night, finding her reading by firelight. From them, I mean. The ones who died or went crazy. How do you know? Because you're still you. Still the girl who cared about being fair, about being seen, about building something instead of just destroying. He sat beside her.
The fire didn't change that. It just gave you the power to actually do something about it. She wanted to believe him. By the third month, they had almost 60 wolves in the settlement. They'd rebuilt the main structures using a combination of traditional methods and creative applications of the various abilities people brought. Asha's water manipulation made construction easier. A wolf named Derek, who could manipulate stone-shaped foundations in hours instead of days. They called it Haven. Simple, but accurate. And then the challenges began. The first came from a pack to the south. Not a military attack, just a formal challenge. Their alpha, a man named Corvus, demanded Nyra submit to pack law or be declared rogue and hunted. "You're creating instability," Corvus said when they met at the border. He was older, scarred, the kind of alpha who'd held power through decades of crushing anyone who challenged him. Wolves need hierarchy, need structure. What you're building is chaos. "What I'm building is choice," Nyra replied. "Nobody here is forced to stay. Nobody's forced to follow rules they don't believe in. That's not how wolf society works." "Then maybe wolf society needs to change." Corvus's eyes flashed gold. "Submit to proper authority or face the consequences." Nyra let fire dance across her knuckles. "I don't submit to anyone anymore. I tried that. It didn't work out well." They stood facing each other for a long moment. Then Corvus made his mistake. He lunged, shifting mid-leap into a massive gray wolf. Nyra didn't even move. Fire erupted in a circle around her, a wall of flame that turned Corvus's charge into a yelping retreat. She didn't burn him, didn't hurt him seriously, just made it very clear that attacking her was a bad idea. "I don't want to fight you," she said calmly. "I don't want to fight any pack. I just want to be left alone to build something different. But if you force the issue, I will defend what's mine." Corvus shifted back to human, singed and furious. "This isn't over." "It is if you're smart." He left, and Nyra knew he'd be back with more wolves, more force. Word would spread that she'd challenged an alpha and won without even trying. She was right. 2 weeks later, representatives from 4 different packs showed up at Haven. Not to attack, to talk. They met in the main hall, a structure they'd built specifically for gatherings. Nyra sat at one end of a long table, Finn and Reeve on either side of her. The pack representatives spread out across from them. "You're causing problems," said Alpha Helena from the Western Territories. She was younger than most alphas, sharp-eyed and political. "Wolves are leaving established packs to join your settlement. You're disrupting the order we've maintained for generations." "I'm offering an alternative to wolves who don't fit your order," Nyra replied. "If your packs are so stable, so fair, why are wolves leaving to come here? Because you're offering them freedom from responsibility, from duty." This from Marcus Thornridge, an older alpha from the East. "You're letting them abandon their obligations." "I'm letting them choose their own obligations. There's a difference." Helena leaned forward. "What happens when your little experiment fails? When wolves realize that freedom without structure is just chaos? Who cleans up that mess?" "It won't fail." "You're very confident for someone who's been doing this for 3 months. I'm confident because I'm not forcing anyone to be here. Everyone in Haven chose this. Chose to build something new instead of conforming to something old that didn't work for them." Nyra met each alpha's eyes in turn. "You're afraid. Not of chaos. You're afraid that if this works, if we prove that wolves can thrive without your hierarchies and bloodline politics, then your entire power structure becomes optional." Silence. Then Marcus laughed, the sound bitter. "You're Marcus Ashvale's daughter, all right. Same arrogance, same belief that you know better than everyone else." "I don't know better than everyone, but I know what didn't work for me, and I know I'm not the only one." Nyra stood. "Here's what I'm offering. Leave us alone, and we'll leave you alone. We're not trying to destroy the pack system. We're just offering an alternative for those it doesn't serve. You keep your territories, your hierarchies, your traditional ways. We build ours. Everyone who wants to be here comes voluntarily. Everyone who wants to leave can go freely." "And if we refuse?" Helena asked. "Then you'll have to decide if destroying us is worth the cost. Because I promise you, it'll cost more than you expect." Fire flickered in Nyra's eyes. "I burned down my own pack's main hall without breaking a sweat. I've trained every day since. I'm not the girl you heard about anymore. I'm what she became when she stopped apologizing for being different." The alphas looked at each other, some silent conversation passing between them.
We'll discuss this, Helena said finally. But understand, we're watching. The moment your haven becomes a threat to pack stability, we'll respond with force.
Fair enough.
I'd expect nothing less. They left, and Finn exhaled heavily. That could have gone worse. It's not over, Reeves said. They're going to test you, push boundaries, see how far they can go before you push back.
Let them test. We'll be ready. The real test came a month later. A group of 20 wolves appeared at Haven's border. Not representatives, not diplomats. Warriors. Led by someone Nyra recognized immediately. Cale Thornridge. He stood at the front of the group, looking different than he had at the confrontation months ago. Harder. More certain. The kind of alpha he'd been training to be his whole life. Nyra Ashvale, he called across the clearing that separated them. I'm here to issue a formal challenge.
Nyra stepped out of Haven, Finn beside her, Asha and Derek and a dozen others at her back. A challenge to what? To your authority. Your right to lead Haven. Your claim to power. Cale's voice was formal, the words of ritual challenge. Under traditional pack law, any alpha can challenge another for leadership. You've declared Haven independent, but you're still operating with pack structures. That makes you subject to challenge. I'm not a pack alpha. You lead wolves. You make decisions that affect their lives. You've claimed territory and defended it with force. That makes you functionally an alpha, whether you use the title or not. Cale gestured to the wolves behind him. I challenge your right to lead. If you win, the packs accept Haven's independence officially. If I win, Haven dissolves and its wolves return to proper pack structures. Nyra felt fire surge in her chest. You're using pack law to attack something that exists outside pack law. That's not a challenge. That's a trap. It's an opportunity. Win, and you get what you want. Official recognition. Lose, and the uncertainty ends. Cale's expression was hard to read. Unless you're afraid? I'm not afraid of you. Then accept the challenge. Finn grabbed her arm. Don't. This is obviously a setup. They want you to fight under their rules, on their terms. If I refuse, they'll use it as proof that Haven is weak, that we can't defend ourselves. Nyra looked at the gathered wolves behind Kael, all trained warriors, all ready to fight if this went wrong. But if I accept and win, we get official recognition. We get to exist without constant threats. And if you lose? I won't. She stepped forward. I accept your challenge, Cale Thornridge, but not under traditional pack law, under Haven law. Which is what? No killing. First blood doesn't determine victory. Surrender or unconsciousness does. And no pack warriors interfering. She gestured to both groups. Just you and me. Winner determines Haven's fate. Cale considered this, then nodded. Agreed. They moved to the center of the clearing. The gathered wolves formed a circle around them. Haven residents on one side, pack warriors on the other. Nyra and Kael faced each other across 10 feet of neutral ground. I don't want to hurt you, Kael said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. Then surrender now. I can't. Too much is riding on this. He shifted his stance, preparing to attack. But I want you to know, I regret what happened between us. I regret the rejection. I regret not fighting for you when I should have. Regret doesn't change the past. No. But it might change the future. Kael's eyes met hers. Win or lose, I want you to know I see you now. Really see you, and you're magnificent. Then he attacked. Kael was fast. Alpha genetics and years of training evident in every movement. He came in low, trying to get under her guard before she could use fire effectively. Nyra sidestepped, letting flame trail from her hands in whips that lashed out at his legs. He dodged, rolled, came up swinging. They danced around each other, fire and flesh, power and skill. Kael was good, better than she'd expected. He'd clearly been training specifically for this, learning how to fight someone with elemental abilities. But he'd been training for weeks. Nyra had been training for months, and she was fighting for everything she'd built. She feinted left, threw fire right, and when Kael dodged, she was already moving, already inside his guard. Fire erupted from her palm directly into his chest. Not hot enough to seriously burn, but hot enough to hurt, to shock, to make him stumble back. She didn't give him time to recover. She pressed the advantage, fire whips lashing,
forcing him back step by step. "Yield," she said. "Not yet." Kale shifted, bones cracking, fur spreading, until a massive wolf stood where the man had been. His alpha wolf, larger than normal, stronger than most. He lunged. Nyra created a wall of fire between them. The wolf hit it and yelped, but pushed through, fur smoking, determined to reach her. She dropped the wall and created a sphere instead, trapping the wolf inside a cage of fire. Not touching him, not burning him, just containing him completely. "Yield," she said again. The wolf circled inside the cage, looking for an opening. Found none. She'd been practicing this for weeks. Perfect control, perfect containment. Slowly, the wolf shifted back to human. Kale stood inside the fire cage, naked and singed and breathing hard. "I yield," he said finally. Nyra let the fire die. The gathered wolves erupted in noise, some cheering, some protesting, all of them understanding what had just happened. Haven had won its right to exist. Kale looked at her with something complicated in his eyes. "You really have become something incredible. I became what I always was. You just couldn't see it before. I see it now." He stepped closer, lowered his voice. "The bond, even broken, I still feel something, like an echo. Do you?" Nyra paused. "Honestly? Yes, but it's not enough. It's not the same as choosing each other freely, and I won't go back to someone who only values me after I proved I didn't need them." "Fair." Kale stepped back, accepting the rejection with more grace than he'd shown the first time. "But know that I'll honor this. Haven's independence. Its right to exist. You won this fairly. Will the other alphas honor it? They'll have to. This was witnessed, recorded by pack law." He looked at the warriors behind him. "We're done here. Haven stands independent." They left, and Nyra felt something settle in her chest. It wasn't over. It would never be completely over. There would always be challenges, always be wolves who wanted to test her, always be alphas who saw Haven as a threat. But they'd proven they could stand, could fight, could win. The celebration that night was loud and chaotic, and everything Nyra had never been allowed to have in her old pack. People laughed and drank and shared stories of how they'd ended up here, what they'd escaped, what they hoped to build. Finn found her standing apart from the main celebration, looking at the growing settlement with something like pride. "You did it," he said. "Built something that matters. We did it. I couldn't have done this alone. Maybe. But you're the one who made it possible, the one who said no when everyone expected you to break." Finn smiled. The girl who got rejected became the queen they never saw coming. "I'm not a queen. You're something better. You're someone who gives other people permission to be different, to be powerful in ways the old systems don't recognize." He gestured at the celebration. "Every person here is here because you showed them it was possible." Nyra watched Asha demonstrating her water manipulation to a group of younger wolves, their faces lit with wonder and possibility. Watched Torin laughing with new friends, the grief still there but no longer crushing. Watched Derek shaping stone sculptures just because he could, just because it was beautiful. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she admitted. "I just wanted them to see me, to acknowledge they were wrong. And instead you built something that makes being wrong irrelevant, that makes their judgment meaningless because you created an alternative." Finn's voice was soft. "That's better than revenge. That's revolution." Movement at the edge of the celebration caught her eye. A figure standing in the shadows, watching. Nyra recognized her immediately, even from a distance. Sarah. Her twin sister stepped into the firelight, alone, looking nervous and uncertain in a way Nyra had never seen before. "Can we talk?" Sarah asked quietly. Nyra nodded, gesturing away from the crowd. They walked in silence until the noise faded to background hum. "I came to apologize," Sarah said finally. "Really apologize, not just say words because they're expected." "Okay, I was jealous of you. My whole life I was jealous." Sarah's voice cracked slightly. "You were always smarter, always asked better questions, always seemed to understand things I couldn't. And when we both failed to shift, when you couldn't and I could, I felt relieved. Finally, I was the successful one, the worthy one." "Sarah, let me finish, please." Sarah took a breath. "When Kyle rejected you,
When he chose me, I told myself I deserved it, that I'd earned it by being what the pack needed. But watching you these past months, seeing what you built, understanding what you actually are, I realize I was wrong. I didn't deserve him. I just took what you lost. Nyra waited. The bond never felt right, Sarah continued. It was supposed to be fate, supposed to be perfect, but it always felt like I was wearing someone else's clothes, like I was playing a role instead of living a life. She looked at Nyra with tears streaming. I released him last week, broke the bond officially. Kyle deserves someone who chose him freely, not someone who took him by default. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to know I understand now. I understand what I took from you. And I'm sorry, truly sorry. Sarah wiped at her tears. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know. Nyra studied her twin, seeing the genuine remorse, the real understanding that had been missing before. I forgive you, she said finally. Sarah looked shocked. You do? Not because you deserve it, because I'm tired of carrying anger toward you, because you're my sister, and I remember when we used to be friends before pack politics got between us. Nyra's smile was sad. We'll probably never be close again, but we don't have to be enemies. Thank you. Sarah hesitated. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy here with all this? She gestured at Haven. Is this what you actually wanted? Nyra thought about it, really thought. I wanted to be seen, she said finally. I wanted people to acknowledge I wasn't broken. I wanted to matter. She looked at the celebration, at the wolves who'd found home here. I got all that, but I also got something I didn't expect, purpose. The chance to help other people who were told they didn't fit. That's worth more than revenge, more than proving anyone wrong. You really have changed. Yeah, I guess I have. Nyra looked at her sister. What will you do now? I don't know. Figure out who I am outside of being the successful twin or the alpha's mate. Sarah smiled weakly. Maybe I'll come back sometime. Ask if Haven has room for one more wolf who doesn't fit traditional molds. There's always room for people trying to find themselves. Sarah hugged her, quick, uncertain, but genuine. Then she left, disappearing back into the forest toward Ashvale territory. Nyra stood alone for a moment, feeling something like peace settle over her. She wasn't the broken girl anymore. Wasn't the rejected mate or the defective daughter. She was Nyra Ashvale, Phoenix carrier, founder of Haven, and someone who'd turned pain into purpose. The fire in her chest burned steady and warm, no longer a curse or a cage, but simply part of who she was. She walked back to the celebration, and when people saw her coming, they cheered. Not because she was powerful or dangerous or a symbol of revolution, but because she was theirs, and they were hers, and together they'd built something that mattered. Finn handed her a drink. To the queen who never wanted a crown. To the family we chose, Nyra corrected. They drank, and the celebration continued into the night, fire and laughter, and the sound of wolves who'd finally found a place to belong. Months later, Elder Morvain would document it all. The rise of Haven, the challenge that secured its independence, the new model of wolf society that emerged from one girl's rejection. Other settlements would spring up, following Haven's example. The rigid pack hierarchies would start to bend, forced to adapt or lose members to these new alternatives. The world was changing, and at the center of it all was a girl who'd been told she was nothing, who'd been sealed and rejected and cast out, who'd taken all that pain and forged it into something beautiful. Nyra stood on the ridge overlooking Haven one evening, watching the sun set over buildings they'd raised together, watching wolves train and laugh and live without fear of being judged defective. She thought about this girl she'd been 6 months ago, standing in front of that bonfire, feeling the mate bond snap into place with someone who would reject her. That girl had been terrified, broken, lost. This woman was none of those things. Was it worth it? Finn asked, joining her on the ridge. All the pain, all the struggle? Nyra considered the question seriously. The pain wasn't worth it. Pain is never worth it. But what I built from the pain? What I became when I stopped trying to fit into spaces that weren't made for me? She smiled. Yeah, that was worth everything. Below them, Haven glowed with firelight and life and possibility. And Nyra Ashvale,
The phoenix who'd risen from the ashes of rejection finally felt like she'd come home. Not to a place, but to herself. And that was the greatest victory of all.